The scorpion's tail was poisonous, but the meat under the shell was not. The only problem it had was the smell. But compared to the other food inside the dust world, it was not bad at all. If Wei Xiaobei had not previously used his great spear to the point where he made the giant black scorpion meat inedible, he would have already collected their meat. Although the giant black scorpion looked big, its meat was not that much, only found under the shell and inside its legs. The scorpion was 1.5 meters long, so the amount of meat that could be obtained from it was around 1 kilogram. This, however, was normal, as scorpions were only at most 5 kilograms in weight. Being able to obtain 1 kilogram of meat was already not bad. After shoving the scorpion meat inside a plastic bag and into his backpack, Wei Xiaobei dusted his hands off and returned back the white mist dagger to his weight. He once again advanced forward by about 20 meters and another protrusion seemed to have received the vibrations and started moving towards Wei Xiaobei. After killing a giant black scorpion with his bare hands, Wei Xiaobei gained a bit of experience. Immediately, he stopped moving and waited for the scorpion to pounce out from the sand. When it came out, Wei Xiaobei made a sudden maneuver to get behind the scorpion, grabbed onto its tail, and crushed it. Once a scorpion lost their tail, the threat that they mounted against Wei Xiaobei would notably decrease. Wei Xiaobei did not stop there. He stamped his foot on the sand and borrowed the momentum to jump. 1,000-kilogram fall. With his left foot in front, he descended with high speed and fell on the back shell of the scorpion with the impact of a heavy steel pillar. This kick had instantly shattered the back shell into pieces. At this moment, the scorpion still struggled, but it was not far from death. Wei Xiaobei kicked off its pincers and once again took out the white mist dagger to dissect it. In just a few minutes, he had gained another 0.5 kilogram of scorpion meat. This time, he had used too much leg strength, causing the meat to be wasted. Huang Dejun stood on top of the sand dune and looked at Wei Xiaobei kill the different scorpions using a range of methods. Facing such strong enemies, Huang Dejun felt powerless. He roughly guessed that this place was another world. And that in this world, strength far outweighed the advantage of knowledge. Huang Dejun was still a graduate from a famous university. Even if he was filled with envy in his heart, he was not an idiot. At least, for this period of time, he could only rely on Wei Xiaobei, his rival in love, to survive in this world. After recognizing this point, it was easy to imagine how unpleasant Huang Dejun felt. Naturally, Wei Xiaobei did not care about his thoughts at all. After killing 3 more giant black scorpions, Wei Xiaobei returned back to the top of the sand dune. Not waiting for Huang Dejun to come back to focus, he just chopped towards his neck. Huang Dejun's vision immediately darkened and his body limply fell to the ground, fainting from the attack. Wei Xiaobei made a horse stance and maintained it on the spot. Then, he concentrated into his dantian. For a martial artist that had reached a certain level, qi was something that would be continuously produced by the body, but by being in a stance, that was when qi would be produced the most. At this moment of time, the qi inside his dantian was motionless. However, when Wei Xiaobei placed his thoughts on it, it began to move and merge with the uncontrollable qi inside his body. Wei Xiaobei did not maintain his stance for long, and after only about 20 minutes, he relaxed himself. The qi inside his dantian had already increased to a certain degree. The benefits of entering a stance, however, was not only this. Wei Xiaobei had also felt a lot more energized. The fatigue that accumulated over his previous fights had substantially decreased. Huang Dejun, who was lying down on the sand dune beside him, had still not woken up. Wei Xiaobei did not pay any more attention to him, and once again jumped down from the sand dune and followed his previous pattern of luring and killing the hidden scorpions one by one. 5 more scorpions died in different ways under Wei Xiaobei's hand. At the same time, the amount of scorpion meat inside his backpack increased by 5 kilograms. However, in the next moment, Wei Xiaobei could no longer be as relaxed. The closer he got to the fiery red mountain range, the more the protrusions increased. Even if he wanted to attract the scorpions one by one, it had become impossible to do it anymore. When the sand blasted open, there were now 2 scorpions that surrounded him and pounced. Wei Xiaobei slightly wrinkled his brows but charged them head-on with a huge stride, escaping between the 2 scorpions. This was one of the things the scorpions could not do. Whether it was normal scorpions or these giant black scorpions, both of them lacked the innate ability of jumping. They could only move by crawling on the ground, while jumping was an impossible thing for them. As a result, before they could even turn around to find Wei Xiaobei, their tails had been crushed. Wei Xiaobei then knocked them against each other and killed them with a series of punches and kicks. Wei Xiaobei guessed that their lack of jumping ability was the reason why they were only 50 evolution points, while a fishman guard was worth 60 evolution points. When Wei Xiaobei finally passed through the valley, it had roughly been about an hour. But this amount of time was certainly not a waste. By the time he reached the end of the valley, his evolution points had swelled up to 1101 evolution points. However, Wei Xiaobei's gains were not just the evolution points. Wei Xiaobei did not forget about Huang Dejun. Returning back to his location, Huang Dejun had just started to wake up. "Follow me." Wei Xiaobei coldly glanced at Huang Dejun and moved forward. Huang Dejun did not know how to feel about the situation he was in. For one, he was puzzled why Wei Xiaobei would knock him unconscious for no reason. However, after following Wei Xiaobei for a certain distance, he saw the open corpses of the giant black scorpions. His head pulled back when he saw the scene as he followed behind Wei Xiaobei in a well-behaved fashion. After passing through the valley, they were not far from the fiery red mountain range. The closer they got to the mountain range, the hotter the surface temperature of the sand became. Wei Xiaobei could somewhat tell that the surface temperature had already exceeded 50 degrees. This meant that the temperature of the air around them was close to 40 degrees. Huang Dejun followed behind Wei Xiaobei, dripping sweat wherever he went. He felt so hot and parched it was as if he was about to breathe his last. As a small leader for a multinational corporation, Huang Dejun had enjoyed the benefit of office air conditioning. Even his apartment had an installed air conditioner. In reality, Huang Dejun had never encountered such a poor environment in his entire life. "Xiaobei, can you give me some water?" Huang Dejun spoke with difficulty as his throat was so dry that it could let out flames. "I'll give you water after we walk for another kilometer." Wei Xiaobei did not point out to Huang Dejun about how he had previously drunk an entire bottle of water by himself. He only replied coldly and continued to move without stopping or slowing down. After reaching this point, the number of hidden giant black scorpions had rapidly decreased. It was difficult to even meet a single one without walking for another 100 meters. Wei Xiaobei's entire body was in a state of alertness. It was easy to see that the scorpions could handle this temperature. The reason that there were only a few of them was perhaps due to the presence of a stronger monster nearby, forcing the giant black scorpions to distance themselves from this place. Da-da-da. A continuous crackling sound like firecrackers came from the foot of the fiery red mountain range. Huang Dejun did not notice the sound, but Wei Xiaobei's face tensed up. He instructed Huang Dejun, "Wait here and don't go anywhere." After stating his commands, Wei Xiaobei quickly moved toward the foot of the mountain. As a retired soldier, Wei Xiaobei could easily discern that it was not the sound of firecrackers that he had heard, but rather it was sound of gunfire of AK-47 rifles. The continuous sound similar to that of the Type 81 assault rifle made Wei Xiaobei reminisce about his days in the army. However, it was not the best time for Wei Xiaobei to do so. Right now, there were more than 10 armed men continuously firing their guns. Their faces and bodies were covered in camouflage paint. They were also wearing camouflage clothing. If Wei Xiaobei's vision had not exceeded that of a normal person's vision and the weapons hadn't continued to make noise, then it would have been very difficult for him to have noticed them. This armed group was not comprised of Chinese people, nor were they of Asian descent. Based on their body size and hair, Wei Xiaobei determined that there were white men and black men in the group. This made Wei Xiaobei a bit suspicious. When did armed men appear inside the dust world? They are even carrying modern firearms. Their existence in the dust world might be reasonable. Wei Xiaobei assumed that these armed men must have come from the real world. However, as for how they came here, it became a problem. The problem was why armed men were in Chuihu City. In short, there were many questions that arose in Wei Xiaobei's mind from this scene. Moreover, the target of the armed men was an owl. It was understandable since the owl was different from the owls in reality. Its face appeared human, but it had 4 eyes and long ears. The most terrifying aspect was that the owl was 5 meters tall in height. It looked heavy and sluggish, but it was able to dodge the bullets from the armed men as it flew 100 meters above the ground. This is... Wei Xiaobei's brain moved fast and recalled what it was after a while. There was a bird with the same description in the classic of mountains and seas. It was called a yong. A yong was a bird that was listed in the classic of mountains and seas. It looked like an owl, but it had a human face with 4 eyes and long ears. The sounds that it let out were the same as its name. Once it appeared, a drought would be created around it. The description was short, but it was able to make Wei Xiaobei slightly sweat in concern. Afterwards, one of the armed men had shot the owl, causing the owl to cry out loudly. This confirmed that it was truly a yong that was described in the classic of mountains and seas. A majority of the monsters described in the classic of mountains and seas were not good creatures. There was one way to describe these monsters, and that was devils. To speak frankly, these creatures inside the classic of mountains and seas exceeded normal organisms by a large amount. Wei Xiaobei had seen a shangfu before. If it truly existed in reality and if a normal person did not have weapons, it would have pecked many people to death. Additionally, just a citizen of Longbow's legs were enough to deal with modern armies. In short, any monsters seen in the classic of mountains and seas could easily terrorize humans in reality. There was a saying associated with yongs, seeing them brought great droughts. Although it did not mention how the great droughts appeared, these great droughts had a relation with the appearance of yongs. It was so much that there was a huge probability that a drought was created by a yong. At the same time, creatures that could create a great drought were powerful creatures, especially in Chinese legends. An example of this was the drought demon. Just from observing the battle between the armed men and the yong, it was apparent how strong it was. Those bullets that were able to turn humans into corpses within seconds landed on the yong, but the force of the bullets were dampened by its thick feathers. Although some bullets had passed through the feathers and hit the yong's body, the most they could do was make the yong bleed a bit. Its appearance was like a human pincushion. Just using guns to kill the yong was not enough. Moreover, when the yong was injured, it would begin to dive down and chase after the armed men. These armed men knew how to pull the attention of enemies away from each other. If one person was being chased, the others would concentrate fire on the yong's body to attract the yong's attention. Wei Xiaobei did not move on impulse. Instead, he lied down on the sand and quietly observed the battle between the men and the yong. In Wei Xiaobei's eyes, the foreign armed men might not be good people, and they were most likely mercenaries. If Wei Xiaobei joined the fight, it would be hard to say that the mercenaries would not attack him. They were using adept tactics based solely on their hand signs and wonderful cooperation. If it was Wei Xiaobei, he would not be able to have done this when he was a soldier. There was a limit to the power of bullets. The fighting continued for a period of time. 2 armed men split up from the group and ran for their lives. After retreating by 100 meters, the 2 men brought out their bazookas, loaded the warheads, and aimed at the yong, who dived from time to time. Seeing this scene, Wei Xiaobei couldn't help but become nervous. At this point in time, victory or defeat was about to be decided. However, after the two armed men distanced themselves, the other armed men's firepower had weakened, and this gave the Yong an opportunity to strike. In a flash, one of the armed men who was not able to dodge the Yong's dive was bitten on the waist and was snatched up into the sky by the Yong. Seeing this scene, the armed men strengthened their firepower. In just a few breaths of time, the comrade of the armed men that was seized into the sky by the Yong had been turned into a hornet's nest. However, the Yong did not seem to care about the corpse in its mouth being torn to shreds. Instead, it seemed to be satisfied by the blood that flowed into its mouth as it was circling in the air. Then it relaxed its beak, dropping the corpse. The Yong dived down again and flew by the side of the free-falling corpse. It extended its claws and tore the corpse in midair into pieces. One part of the body still hung on the Yong's beak and was swallowed in 2 to 3 gulps. Seeing this scene, the armed men became crazier. The outcome of their comrade was too tragic, but they were also in the same situation. Whoosh! Whoosh! 2 simultaneous sounds echoed from the distance. Their comrades that had left the battlefield pulled the trigger, sending 2 rockets flying out from the bazooka. The warhead was aimed at the Yong, which was still busy eating. The 2 rockets moved, leaving a trail of smoke behind, and flew about 100 meters. The Yong, however, was actually quite sharp. When it saw this scene, it dived down. One of the rockets flew overhead and missed, but the second rocket still had directly hit the Yong. With a loud boom, a giant explosion burst on the Yong's body. The armed men immediately cheered after seeing this. However, the next thing that happened made the armed men speechless. The Yong dived down from the flames and opened its claws. It picked up 2 armed men and soared back into the skies. After flying a few hundred meters up, it threw down the 2 armed men. Pata. Even on the soft sandy ground, the 2 armed men had been turned into meat paste. Seeing this scene, the armed men continued to resist with their lives, but their morale had already plummeted. Whoosh! Whoosh! Perhaps because the Yong had received injuries from the previous rocket, it was not able to dodge the 2 incoming rockets. 2 bursts of flames exploded on the Yong's BDY. However, at this time, the rockets that the armed men held as an advantage, had already ran out. They had no choice but to pick up their AK-47 and directly stand against the Yong. After being hit by rockets consecutively, the Yong was furious. It no longer wanted to play around anymore. Every time it dived, 1 to 2 armed men were clutched high in the air and were dropped to their death. After doing this a few times, the mercenaries crumbled apart. They could not even consider fighting against the Yong anymore. The remaining 7 armed men turned around and ran away in their own directions. One of the armed men who were running away, just happened to run towards Wei Xiaobei's spot. When a person was running for their lives, their speed would be extremely fast. Moreover, the armed men were completely different from just normal men. Seeing that one of the armed men was running over, Wei Xiaobei prepared to grab onto him and ask him a question about their identity and other questions. When the armed man was about 40 meters away from him, a voice came from behind Wei Xiaobei. Xiaobei, did something happen? Can you give me some water? I am about to thirst to death. Not good. This is Huang Dejun's voice. That idiot. Wei Xiaobei felt a stabbing pain all over his body. He did not even care about Huang Dejun's question. He immediately turned around and propelled himself forward like a spider. In an instant, he jumped more than 10 meters to the side. Wei Xiaobei was lying down, so when the armed man was running away, he naturally did not notice Wei Xiaobei. However, the petrified Huang Dejun appeared behind Wei Xiaobei and spoke as if he was in a shopping center. Unless the armed man was a deaf person or an idiot, he would have obviously noticed Huang Dejun. Da-da-da-da-da. Without any hesitation, the armed man pointed the muzzle of his AK-47 at Huang Dejun and opened fire. Tongues of flame came out from the gun, and in that short burst 2 bullets flew towards Huang Dejun. Soon after, a longer burst came, shooting out 9 bullets that were thinly spread around Huang Dejun's surroundings to prevent him from escaping. Pew! Pew! Before Huang Dejun even heard the sound of the bullets passing through the air, he already felt the pain in his chest. When he looked down, he was shocked to notice that the chest part of his clothes were torn and fresh blood poured out from what seemed to be a gun wound. This surprised Huang Dejun to the point that his mind completely blanked out. This is a dream. This must be a dream. Huang Dejun used his hoarse voice to mumble. He attempted to use his hands to cover the gun wound. However, in the next moment, his vision blacked out. He never knew what happened after, as a hole had suddenly appeared on his forehead and his body fell down like dead weight. Without a doubt, neither Wei Xiaobei nor Huang Dejun, himself, could have predicted that he would die this early. Huang Dejun was never able to even enter a state of life and death struggle and instead, had died just like that. Wei Xiaobei, on the other hand, never thought that the armed man's marksmanship would be so accurate. If Wei Xiaobei did not move earlier, the long burst might have hit Wei Xiaobei. While killing Huang Dejun, who suddenly appeared, the armed man did not stop running. He ran while shooting at Wei Xiaobei who was lying on the sand. However, while running away, he forgot that he had already unleashed a lot of bullets against the Yong. As a result, after Wei Xiaobei dodged the short burst, there was only the sound of the AK-47's bolt hitting nothing left. He doesn't have any bullets. Wei Xiaobei became happy, he immediately leapt up from the ground and pounced towards the armed man. However, what Wei Xiaobei never imagined was that the armed man was very agile. When he saw Wei Xiaobei, he rolled to the side, distancing himself by a few meters from Wei Xiaobei and threw the AK-47 at him. At the same time, he pulled out a handgun hidden on his lower leg. Wei Xiaobei easily caught the AK-47 and threw it back. By some random miraculous chance, the AK-47 had actually knocked away the handgun from the armed man's hand. Seeing the fast approaching Wei Xiaobei, the armed man tried to grab a hold of the handgun that he dropped. As long as these armed men had guns, they would be a huge threat. Wei Xiaobei was well aware of this point. As a result, when he charged forwards, he lightly pulled at his waist. Whoosh! The sound of air being ripped apart could be heard by both parties. The great spear bound around Wei Xiaobei's waist burst out so quickly, it was like black lightning. In an instant, the spear had easily passed through the armed man's forehead, nailing the man's head to the sand. The armed man died, losing control of his body and letting go of the handgun that he had just grabbed. The battle had ended. Wei Xiaobei could not help lightly sigh. He regretfully looked at Huang Dejun's corpse. Although Wei Xiaobei wanted to kill Huang Dejun, he, himself, did not plan on making a move himself. At most, he wanted to use Huang Dejun as cannon fodder to attract a strong monster's attention. However now, Huang Dejun was dead, completely outside of Wei Xiaobei's expectations. Though, in actual fact, this did not matter much. After all, human life was not as valuable in the dust world. Death might just even be a way to be free of this gray place. When it came to Wei Xiaobei's melee fighting ability, he could completely crush the armed men. However, when it comes to firearms, it was his first time fighting against something like that. Even if his vitality was at 17.21 points and his health sub-attribute was at 20.35 points, Wei Xiaobei might not live if the bullet was drilled through his eye socket or his heart. Firearms were too much of a cheat item. It could completely give a weak normal person, even a child, the ability to kill a Guoshu expert. As long as the bullet hits the vitals, this kind of result would become a fact. It must be known that even the slowest bullet surpasses the speed of sound. A bullet could travel more than 300 meters per second. The fastest bullet could travel around 800 meters per second. Naturally, subsonic bullets were an exception to this as they traveled below the speed of sound. No matter what was said, if a gun was aimed at a Guoshu expert, even a Guoshu expert would have difficulty dodging the bullet. Perhaps after his health reaches a high-level checkpoint, Wei Xiaobei would gain the ability to ignore the threat of guns, but before that point, Wei Xiaobei felt that he should keep a certain level of vigilance against modern firearms. Naturally, Guoshu experts had their own advantages against firearms. They could use the moment a gun is aimed at them, perceive the direction, and dodge before it was fired. The stab of pain that Wei Xiaobei felt before was the negative Jing's warning signal against danger. Wherever the enemy aimed at, that part of the body would have a slight stab of pain, alerting the Guoshu expert how to dodge. Wei Xiaobei looked at his status panel. He was rather amazed as he noticed that the armed man gave him 80 evolution points. In other words, the armed man was as strong as an evolved white mouse. Naturally, the armed man's attack was quite fast, but his defense was pitifully weak. Wei Xiaobei turned around and looked at Huang Dejun. He sighed in his heart at the fact that he did not find out how much evolution points a normal person like him gave. However, this was only a single miss as Wei Xiaobei dispelled his thoughts. This kind of thinking was too vile. Wei Xiaobei was still not the type of person who would turn normal people into prey. He felt around the armed man's body and found many things. There were 5 high-energy nutrition bars, 3 bags of pure water, a few bullets, a lighter, a dagger, and many others. A high-energy nutrition bar would be a lot more nutritious compared to hardtacks. This kind of thing was originally special food meant for astronauts. After news of it spread, it became a convenient, easy-to-carry, high-nutrition food. Half a nutrition bar was enough to replenish a normal male's energy for a whole day. The lighter was also not bad. It came from the famous lighter brand, Zippo. It was rumored that if it was placed on the chest, it could block a bullet. However, it was easy to see that the armed man was not able to see if that was true. The lighter would allow Wei Xiaobei to make fire without the need for wood. Wei Xiaobei took the leg holster from the armed man's leg and tied it to his. Then he inserted the dagger and the handgun. After all, using the white mist dagger to harvest meat was a bit of a waste. What made Wei Xiaobei the happiest was the battlefield water purifier and disinfectants he had found inside the armed man's backpack. Wei Xiaobei decided to stop caring about how the armed men brought these things into the dust world, since they were now in his possession. After changing his backpack for the military-use backpack and moving his things inside, he picked up the AK-47, pulled back the gun bolt, felt it with his hands. Then, he quickly filled up an empty magazine with more bullets and loaded it onto the gun. It seems that the armed man used up a lot of ammunition. The remaining bullets could barely fill up 5 magazines. No matter what was said, Wei Xiaobei was a bit excited. It had been a long time since he had held a gun. As a soldier during times of peace, the amount of chances Wei Xiaobei got to fire a gun were too few. Other than the live ammunition test for new recruits, there were live ammunition tests every 3 years, where they would have to shoot at targets. Naturally, a few war preparation troops and special forces fired bullets to feed themselves. Second-tier troops like Wei Xiaobei were not as blessed. Data. Wei Xiaobei treated the corpse of the armed man as a target and shot a few bullets from 50 meters away. He nodded his head in satisfaction. Although the Type 81 assault rifle he used before and the AK-47 he was holding now were developed with the same foundation, the materials that was used for the gun barrel and other fine details made them a little different. In simpler words, the AK-47 was easier to use and resistant to dirt. When firing it, the muzzle swayed easily, severely affecting its accuracy. On the other hand, the Type 81 assault rifle was not as easy to use or dirt-resistant, but its accuracy was better. As a result, out of the 5 bullets that Wei Xiaobei shot out, only 3 hit the corpse. This kind of result against a stationary target 50 meters away was not that good. However, after considering Wei Xiaobei's shooting skill and the AK-47's inaccuracy, this result was also not that bad. After settling his excitement, Wei Xiaobei once again bound the great spear around his waist and carried the AK-47. Then he ran towards the battlefield where the armed men and the Yong fought. While advancing, he looked at the battle log under his status panel. He found the record of the Yong. Battle log. You witnessed the fight between a group of mercenaries and 2-star terror creature, Yong. You encountered a 1-star elite creature, mercenary. You killed the mercenary. You obtained 80 evolution points. Battle ends. The Yong was actually a 2-star terror creature. Compared to the tree spirit, its strength was roughly greater. After all, the ability to fly was already a huge advantage. With this, in addition to being able to fight and run with its large build, it was like a heavy ground attack aircraft. Wei Xiaobei calmed down for a bit. Although a 2-star terror creature was a lot stronger than a 2-star elite creature, he still had a chance to win. Moreover, under the attacks of the mercenaries, the Yong would not be in perfect condition. The Yong might have even received heavy injuries from the rockets that had been fired against it. In just a short amount of time, Wei Xiaobei arrived at the previous battlefield and stopped for a moment. The mercenaries that were under that Yong's attack had all disappeared. 300 meters in front of Wei Xiaobei, there were 2 mercenaries who were covering for each other while shooting at the Yong that was hovering above them. Seeing the Yong getting ready to dive down again, the 2 of them scampered like rats. However, the direction they were escaping to was a bad choice. They were running towards a crevice in the middle of the fiery red mountain range. The crevice was more than 10 meters wide, but in Wei Xiaobei's eyes, the crevice had faint signs of danger. It was as if there was danger hidden inside the crevice. As a Guoshu expert who had stepped on the realm of negative Jing, his perception towards danger was much sharper than before. The 2 mercenaries were most likely elites of the mercenary group, otherwise, they would not have survived in the face of the Yong for this long. By the looks of it, as long as the 2 mercenaries escaped towards the crevice, then they would have a bigger probability of living. After all, the crevice was only a bit more than 10 meters wide. For the Yong, whose wingspan exceeded 18 meters, the place restricted its ability to fly. Even if it wanted to chase after the nimble mercenaries running on the ground, it would not be able to catch them at all. However, the next scene gave Wei Xiaobei goosebumps. When the 2 mercenaries were about to reach the crevice, they suddenly turned around and ran, as if they saw something terrifying. However, before the mercenaries ran even 10 steps, flames sprayed out from the inside the cave, chasing after one of the mercenaries. The mercenary, in shock, hastily threw himself to the side, but it was already too late. The flames pounced onto him in an instant. Soon, the flames suddenly increased in intensity. It was as if the mercenary had been doused in gasoline and was ignited by a fire, swallowing him completely. However, this was not the end. In the next instant, the flames separated from the mercenary and turned into the shape of a snake. It moved more than 20 meters, landing on the other mercenary. With a low explosion, the last mercenary was set ablaze. The Yong that saw the scene seemed to be frightened. It cut off the momentum in its dive and flapped its wide wings. It tried to move its body higher in the air with all its might, attempting to escape. However, the flame did not have any plans of letting the Yong go. In half a breath's time, it moved from the mercenary's body and soared to the skies, shooting towards the Yong. The flame was very fast. Even if the Yong used all of its strength, it was not able to escape the flame's pursuit. In a flash, the flame had caught up to the Yong, with only a few meters between them. At this time, the Yong let out a shriek and immediately let out a yellow-colored sand cloud from its body, spreading it everywhere. With a loud boom, the flame and the Yong knocked against each other and bounced back from the force. The sand cloud that had spread in the air appeared to be alive. It twisted around the flame, binding it. No matter how the flame moved, the sand cloud was like a cage trapping it within. Following the formation of the sand cloud cage, the flame began to slow down. It was only then that Wei Xiaobei was able to see its true form. Is that a firebird? No, it's a pheasant. The chest is deep scarlet, its crown golden, its back yellow, its head green, and its tail was bright scarlet. Its appearance is extremely gorgeous. However, half of the body of the pheasant was covered in blazing flames, preventing the sand cloud from completely binding it. In contrast, the yong was in a worse state. Although it had released the sand cloud and trapped the pheasant, its body had already been ignited by the flames. The flames combusted on the wings and moved inwards. Without a doubt, the yong simply did not dare continue fighting against it. The yong turned around and flew into the distance, escaping for its life. At this time, Wei Xiaobei had already buried himself in the sand. Opening his status panel, he took a look at the pheasant's name. Normal 3-star creature, scarlet pheasant. The scarlet pheasant was also a creature described in the classic of mountains and seas. It was described as such, in one of China's mountains where many fowls live, there lived the scarlet pheasants with the ability to control fire. The Miss Draconic horse was a lot stronger than the scarlet pheasant just from the fact that it was a 3-star terror creature. However, in Wei Xiaobei's eyes, the threat of the scarlet pheasant was not smaller than the Miss Draconic horse. This might be caused by the misconception created by the huge difference in strength. If the Miss Draconic horse was an elephant and the scarlet pheasant was a human, then Wei Xiaobei was an ant who would die if any of them stepped on him. However, this did not mean a human had the same strength as an elephant. Wei Xiaobei looked at his status panel. Until now, his creature rank on the status panel was still a 1-star. Wei Xiaobei had a small hunch as to how to increase this star level. It most likely had something to do with his status panel, but he did not exactly know how to increase it. No matter what was said, the gap between a 1-star and a 3-star was too big. It was so big that Wei Xiaobei could not calculate it, or resist against 3-star creatures. As a result, Wei Xiaobei immediately dug a hole to hide himself, otherwise, if the scarlet pheasant saw him, he would have been burned to ashes in a matter of seconds. The scarlet pheasant's flying speed would probably be faster even if he were to increase his agility to 20 points. Luckily, the thing he was worried about did not happen. After a while, the scarlet pheasant smashed the sand cloud cage to pieces. It drilled out and circled the skies a few times, as if searching for the yong's whereabouts. Perhaps because it was not willing to go far from the crevice, it once again became a ball of flames and disappeared back inside of it. Wei Xiaobei, during all of this, stayed buried in the ground. After a few minutes and seeing that there was no movement in the crevice, Wei Xiaobei leapt out and moved towards the direction the yong escaped to. The yong was not an idiot. If Wei Xiaobei only relied on the direction where the yong escaped, he would have lost it. However, the escaping yong left traces for Wei Xiaobei to follow. The ashes from the burnt feathers was in stark contrast compared to the yellow sand. Moreover, after the yong escaped a certain distance, it moved in a straight line towards the side of the mountain range. This made it a little easier for Wei Xiaobei to find it. While chasing after the yong, Wei Xiaobei had also picked up a few good things. He had picked up a Barrett M82 anti-material rifle with a bit of ammunition, a bazooka with a warhead, drinking water, high-energy nutrition bar, and other junk that happened to be there. He had found these things beside the corpses of the mercenaries. The yong loved to eat meat, but it had no interest towards these cold, hard objects that could someday become a threat to him. This, however, gave Wei Xiaobei a small advantage. As for the AK-47s and the other equipment that were destroyed, Wei Xiaobei left them alone. Luckily, Wei Xiaobei was slightly stronger than before. The combined weight of an anti-material rifle, a bazooka, and an AK-47 was not light to carry. If it was the old Wei Xiaobei who was still working for Dahao Real Estate, he probably would have died from the heaviness of the load that he was carrying. Now, after Wei Xiaobei had run for 10 kilometers, he was only slightly gasping for breath. Moreover, This fatigue was the slight side effect of the desert's high temperature. Wei Xiaobei originally believed that getting closer to the fiery red mountain range would allow him to find the Yong, but he suddenly heard the distinctive cry of the Yong from 3 kilometers away. This cry carried a sense of pain and struggle. Wei Xiaobei immediately slowed down his footsteps. He bent his body down as low as possible to prevent the Yong from noticing him. When he reached the top of a sand dune, he noticed that the Yong was lying down on the sand. Its feathers have mostly been burnt to nothing. A bit of flame was even coming out from its bald spots. The Yong appeared to be extremely battered and exhausted. Seeing this scene, Wei Xiaobei knew that it had received heavy injuries. The distance of its location was merely 1 kilometer away from the fiery red mountain range. Wei Xiaobei was able to clearly see the situation in the fiery red mountain range. If he was a bit farther away, the mountain range would appear as if it was wrapped in flames. However, he was now able to see that the mountain range was made up of fiery red-colored rocks. There were even red plants all over them. Unfortunately, Wei Xiaobei was able to clearly feel the heat coming from the mountain range even if he was this far from it. Wei Xiaobei's initial judgment on the temperature of the mountain range was 100 degrees Celsius. In other words, if water was poured on the surface of the mountains, the water would immediately boil and evaporate. From any angle it was looked at, the mountain range should be called the Mountain of Flames from the legends, but it may not necessarily be so. In reality, the most famous Mountain of Flames was located in the Turpan Depression in Xinjiang. It was said that the highest temperature recorded there during the summer was 82.3 degrees Celsius. On the other hand, this place had exceeded 100 degrees Celsius. Naturally, anything in the dust world was possible. Wei Xiaobei believed that if he had walked through the crevice, the inside of the mountain range would probably reach 1000 degrees Celsius. Luckily, the Yong did not run into the Mountain of Flames. Otherwise, Wei Xiaobei would not be able to continue chasing after it. With Wei Xiaobei's current vitality, he simply could not stay in a place with such a high temperature for a long time. He estimated that 10 minutes inside of the mountain range would be enough to cook him inside and out. Boiling meat in a pot should also take that long to cook most of it. Seeing that the Yong was lying on the sand and moved from time to time, Wei Xiaobei thought for a moment, chose a good position to hide, and set up the anti-material rifle. He then adjusted his position, lied down on the sand dune, and aimed the bazooka at the Yong. Wei Xiaobei had never used a bazooka before. At most, he had only touched and used a Type 81. However, even though he did not have much experience with it, he knew how to use it. Wei Xiaobei slowed down his breathing and placed his finger on the trigger. Soon, he stopped breathing, carefully aimed, and pulled the trigger. Whoosh! The rocket shot out leaving a trail of flames as it quickly moved toward the Yong. The Yong naturally remembered its past encounter with the bazooka's projectiles. As a result, the moment it noticed the rocket, it struggled to get up and flapped its wings in order to leave the place. However, it was now seriously injured. Escaping in a short time would be a difficult task for it to accomplish. When it had just lifted itself from the ground, the rocket flew toward it and hit it, enveloping the Yong in flames. Wei Xiaobei's shooting skill was low. If the Yong had not flown up, the rocket would have passed by its head and flew away without even hitting a single feather of it. This could only be said to be the Yong's bad luck. The explosion sent the Yong right back to the ground. Wei Xiaobei was able to see that the rocket had blasted one of its wings apart, causing a yellow liquid to flow out. In the next moment, the Yong charged toward the direction where the rocket had come from. Even though the Yong was a fast-flying creature, it was also quite swift when it was running on the sand. At the very least, it was slightly faster than a normal adult speed. After tossing away the bazooka, Wei Xiaobei used 4 of his limbs to jump like a spider toward the anti-material rifle. He grabbed the rifle and fired a bullet at the approaching Yong. The shot was not as lucky as the previous rocket. Without a loud bang, the bullet missed by about 30 centimeters away from the Yong's body. This was the result of Wei Xiaobei's hand-eye coordination reaching 13 points. If it was still 9 points, the bullet would probably fly somewhere else. It must be known that for Wei Xiaobei to have achieved this result was already not bad, especially since he was panicking and mainly because he had not used a gun in a long time. This was also the first time he had fired an anti-material rifle. Bang! Another bullet was fired, and this time, it had hit the Yong. However, the Yong was not fazed by this at all. It continued to charge toward Wei Xiaobei, meaning that the bullet did not cause it that much damage. Next, Wei Xiaobei continued to fire until he ran out of bullets. Afterwards, he pulled out the AK-47 and fired at the Yong while he retreated. After he had used up 2 magazines, the distance between the Yong and Wei Xiaobei had decreased to 10 meters. Wei Xiaobei threw away the AK-47 and charged toward the Yong. Seeing Wei Xiaobei charge over, the Yong opened its beak, planning to bite him. Wei Xiaobei stomped his left foot on the ground and dodged. When the Yong passed beside his body, he unbound the great spear on his waist. The great spear was like a caged black dragon that had just obtained freedom. In an instant, it shot toward the back of the Yong's head. Pop! The Yong was sent flying forward and directly collided with the ground of sand. Wei Xiaobei already stood behind the Yong. He held the great spear with both hands and planted his feet firmly on the sand. Strength flowed from his legs, passed through his waist, and gathered in his arms. In an instant, he thrust the spear toward the Yong. Slice! The sound of the great spear tearing through the Yong's body was clear as it could be. However, the Yong's body was too sturdy. Even with Wei Xiaobei's powerful strength, he had actually not even pierced through a third of its body. This had infuriated the Yong. It rolled on the sand, flung off the spear, and flapped its left wing, which was still intact. It had summoned a sand cloud with itself as the center. In reality, Wei Xiaobei had already sensed a trace of danger before this happened, so he immediately retreated. However, under the Yong's rage, the sand cloud quickly spread. Even if Wei Xiaobei used all his strength to run away, the index finger in his left hand accidentally came in contact with the sand cloud. An unbearable pain immediately came from his index finger. When Wei Xiaobei looked at his left hand, he saw that the index finger had yellow grains of sand, and the parts that had sand were slowly drying up, as if it had suddenly lost liquid content. What a terrifying sand cloud! Wei Xiaobei was surprised. He did not dare come in contact with the Yong anymore. He stomped on the ground and leapt up, distancing himself by 20 meters. He pulled out the dagger on his leg and cut off the parts on his hand that had came in contact with the sand. Although it was painful to do so, he did not let the pain show on his face at all, but his forehead gave it away as it was fully drenched in sweat. The deepest cut he made had even exposed his finger bone. If his health attribute was not as high, it would have been very hard to stop the bleeding. Staunching the bleeding in front of the Yong would have exposed him to an even greater danger. Wei Xiaobei grabbed the sand on the ground and rubbed it on his wound. In an instant, the wild bleeding quickly slowed down, as if it was never bleeding in the first place. This cruel cost was worth it. When the cut-off skin fell to the ground, it had turned into gray ash in just half a breath's time. Wei Xiaobei knew that the sand was not some toxic material, but it had the ability to absorb all moisture. The carbonization was most likely caused as a result of this. This was most likely why the Yong could create droughts. If it was not like this, it would not have been famous for it. It was easy to imagine what kind of miserable death Wei Xiaobei would have experienced if he was still in the middle of the sand cloud. A single touch was enough to make a person lose all water content from their body. When he thought about it, the reason why the sand cloud did not affect the scarlet pheasant was probably because the scarlet pheasant did not have much water content in the first place. If the sand cloud was used on a life form with a higher level of water content, then it would be an insanely powerful trump card. The reason why the Yong did not use it against the mercenaries was probably because it looked down on them. Or perhaps, this move was only usable in close combat, and using this move against the mercenaries who were experts in long-range combat would be ineffective. Unfortunately, Wei Xiaobei was good in close-range combat. As a result, he had experienced the power of the sand cloud firsthand. Seeing the Yong that was charging over, Wei Xiaobei quickly did some calculations. Based on the Yong's staggering movements, as if it could fall down at any moment, Wei Xiaobei knew that the Yong was on its last legs. However, even though it was heavily injured, it still had the ability to kill him. The sand cloud was enough to prove this point. However, Wei Xiaobei did not believe that using this skill did not have a price. Wei Xiaobei's special skill would sharply decrease his stamina just by keeping it active. That sand cloud should also be the same to the Yong as a powerful killing move. Thinking about this, Wei Xiaobei ran towards the AK-47 that he had tossed away. The Yong's speed was now much slower. At most, it was as fast as a walking human. This gave Wei Xiaobei a slight chance. He picked up the AK-47 and changed the magazine. He carried the great spear in his left hand and held the AK-47 with his right, as he opened fire at the Yong. This kind of single-arm gun shooting was no problem for Wei Xiaobei with his extreme strength. The only problem was the accuracy of the bullets. However, Wei Xiaobei did not care about this at all. He kept shooting in short bursts, allowing him to sometimes hit the Yong and sometimes hit the sand behind it. The Yong was already a bird that would be startled by the mere twang of a bow. Every time Wei Xiaobei pulled the trigger, the sand cloud around the Yong would become stronger, enveloping the few meters around it. However, this kind of power did not last long. Every 5 seconds, the sand cloud would weaken bit by bit. Moreover, every time it weakened, it would shrink its area by half a meter. After using up a magazine, the sand cloud had already shrunk to a 30 centimeter or so radius around the Yong. Compared to the previous sand cloud, it had decreased by more than half. Changing to a new magazine, Wei Xiaobei simply continued to open fire. At the end, when Wei Xiaobei used up all his magazines, the sand cloud around the Yong was already sticking close to its body. Even if it could expand slightly, it would only reach 20 centimeters. Kill! At this time, Wei Xiaobei threw away the AK-47. He held the great spear in his hands and charged towards the Yong again. After losing the power of the sand cloud, the Yong was like a fish on top of a chopping board. Wei Xiaobei thrust his spear at it over and over. Every time he hit it, he would quickly retreat. After repeating this action more than 10 times, the Yong's body was full of holes and blood flowed out from within. In the end, the Yong could not endure anymore. Its barely standing body swayed back and forth and fell onto the sand head first. Seeing the Yong fall down, Wei Xiaobei still was not in a hurry. He continued to stab the Yong until there was completely no movement at all. Only when his evolution points increased by 450 points did he stop. As long as his evolution points increased, Wei Xiaobei could surely confirm that the enemy was dead. After encountering the corpses in Chuihu University, Wei Xiaobei had to acknowledge this fact. In the dust world, most of the monsters had quite a lot of vitality. Wei Xiaobei put away his great spear, sighed, and walked towards the dead Yong. Compared to his previous records of dangerous fights, Wei Xiaobei had gained a huge bargain this time. If the mercenaries did not fight it and if the scarlet pheasant had not injured it to the point that it could not fly, the amount of difficulty it would be to kill it was hard to imagine. If he had also made a mistake, he would have been already dead. The 450 evolution points completely did not meet Wei Xiaobei's expectation of the Yong at all. This amount of evolution points was only equivalent to killing 9 giant black scorpions. If the Yong wanted to kill 9 giant black scorpions, or even 90 giant black scorpions, it would have been an easy thing for it to do. After all, anything that had reached a certain level of strength could not be so easily defeated, even by numbers. Wei Xiaobei stood in front of the corpse. The appearance of the Yong was very ugly. The injury caused by the explosion, the burnt black feathers, the scars from the flames, all showed how intense the fight was. Wei Xiaobei extended his hands and grabbed the scorched feathers. With a light pull, the blackened feathers all fell down easily. The Yong's body also had some parts that had blackened and it let out a strange meaty fragrance. As for the injuries caused by the bullets and the rocket, they had already been staunched and had closed up. From this, it was visible that the scarlet pheasant was the one that had caused the greatest injury to the Yong, while Wei Xiaobei had snatched all the glory. A monster like this would definitely have something good inside its body. Wei Xiaobei pulled on some of the feathers that were still in good condition. Then he looked at his status panel, but surprisingly, there were no changes. He frowned. He circled the corpse once more and then pulled out an intact feather that had reached 50 centimeters from the Yong's wing. This time, there were changes to the items on hand section of his status panel. Item on hand, white mist knife, sharp, slightly corrosive property, citizen of long bow's leg hair, tough, flexible, Yong's plume. Yong's plume. When he concentrated on it, information on the plume appeared in his mind. The information on the plume was not much. Its rough description said that it was a plume from 2-star terror creature Yong, and can be used to create arrows. Wei Xiaobei then carefully looked at the plume and felt that it was indeed not bad at all. Other than the end of the plume being soft, the shaft of the feather was very solid. Wei Xiaobei used the dagger to cut it a few times and smiled. Even a military-grade dagger was not enough to leave a mark on it. From this, it could be seen that the shaft's hardness was not below some types of alloys. If he sharpened the end of the feather, it would be a good arrow even without attaching an arrowhead. Wei Xiaobei looked at the AK-47 that he threw far away and shook his head. The threat of the AK-47, bazookas, and other things was not small. However, the bullets and rockets were not reusable. A bow and arrow was different. Although the arrow would eventually be worn out after repeated use, an arrow created from materials of the dust world were guaranteed to last long. As long as it was a monster with long feathers, finding a lot of plumes like this would not be a hard task. The only problem now was making a good bow. Wei Xiaobei had temporarily put this matter to the back of his mind and began collecting the plumes. The amount of plumes that were in good condition was a bit less than expected due to a large amount being burned away by the scarlet pheasant's flames. After busying himself for a while, Wei Xiaobei was able to collect another 20 plumes. This amount would definitely be enough for its intended use. With Wei Xiaobei's current strength, if 20 arrows were not enough to kill an enemy, it meant that Wei Xiaobei would have already ran away. However, when Wei Xiaobei began to dissect the corpse, all his problems started. The dagger that Wei Xiaobei used was a high-grade good from those previous mercenaries. The steel was good and just a single touch of the blade was enough to create a line of blood on Wei Xiaobei's hand. However, the dagger lost its usefulness as soon as he tried to cut starting from the Yong's wound. The sharp dagger seemed like a corroded kitchen knife. Even with Wei Xiaobei's strength, he had only expanded the wound by about 10 centimeters after 10 minutes. The most annoying thing was that when Wei Xiaobei had used all his strength, the dagger suddenly broke. He frowned at the scene. Changing to another dagger, he opened the wound a bit more to allow a bit of blood to come out into his hand. When the blood dripped on his hands, Wei Xiaobei's eyes became dull. This was not due to the blood being poisoned, but because information appeared in his mind. Yong's blood, bathing in this could increase resistance to dryness. Wei Xiaobei finally understood that the greatest benefit of the Yong was its blood. After a bit of hesitation, Wei Xiaobei removed his worn-out t-shirt and then removed his pants. This was the first time Wei Xiaobei stood under the sun while being stark naked. In reality, Wei Xiaobei would not have the courage to do it if it was not the dust world. Though this was not related to courage, but more of human nature. Afterwards, Wei Xiaobei did not continue to use the mercenary's dagger to torture himself. He pulled out the white mist dagger and stabbed towards the corpse's swelling skin. Puff! The stinky yet boiling blood inside immediately sprayed out, splashing on Wei Xiaobei's chest. Wei Xiaobei did not care about the stench and the hotness of the blood. He extended his hand and spread the blood all over his body. However, the amount of blood in the Yong's body was already not much. A huge amount had previously flowed into the sand, and it was impossible to pick it up anymore. Soon, Wei Xiaobei used the knife to randomly poke into the Yong's body, draining out more of its blood. In the end, he thought of a better method. He used the white mist knife to completely dissect the Yong. He removed its heart, cut open a hole, and squeezed it above his head. The Yong's heart was a lot bigger than a human's. It was as big as a bamboo basket. Even though a lot of blood had been drained away, there was still a lot inside. When Wei Xiaobei squeezed it, the blood inside was enough to bathe Wei Xiaobei from head to toe. In an instant, Wei Xiaobei, who had slightly suntanned skin, became a stinky bloody man. A price must be paid to obtain things, this was an irrefutable truth. In the next moment, Wei Xiaobei found out about the benefits. Before, when his entire body was still yet to be fully covered in blood, although the stench was bad and the temperature was high, Wei Xiaobei had not suffered any pain, as if he was just bathing in a hot spring. However, when the blood covered over his entire body, Wei Xiaobei felt a sharp pain all over his skin, as if his entire body was soaked in sulfuric acid or magma. The pain was almost the same as if he was being lit on fire. Although the pain could not compare with the pain from muscle reconstruction, it still had its differences. In an instant, Wei Xiaobei lost control of his body and lied flat on the ground. At this time, Wei Xiaobei felt as if all the water content in his body was quickly disappearing. His skin began to carbonize, spreading to the connective tissues. He felt his blood become denser and denser until it was unable to freely flow in his body. This kind of pain was simply indescribable. In reality, Wei Xiaobei did not regret anything, but he silently cursed in his heart. How is this increasing the body's resistance to dryness? This was simply turning me into a mummy. Naturally, his cursing was useless. The process could not be stopped and so was the pain. If Wei Xiaobei's vitality had not been strong enough, he would probably have passed out in just 10 minutes. His body quickly dried up, though, it was on a molecular level. A normal person would not have been able to endure this kind of change. At this time, Wei Xiaobei finally understood that anything inside the dust world, whether it was treasures or materials, they all carried their own dangers. Finally, the process of drying reached his brain. Even if Wei Xiaobei's will was greater than before, he could not help but stop thinking as he blacked out. In reality, all this time he had already lost his vision from the drying process. He first became dizzy and then finally lost consciousness. He could not feel the things outside or could he feel the changes inside his body. After who knows how long, Wei Xiaobei eventually woke up. When he woke up, he felt as if he was a traveler that had been lost in the desert for months. His body was extremely dehydrated with every organ in his body sending him warning signals. Only his skin was in a better situation as it continuously absorbed the moisture in the air. However, the moisture in the air had not been much. It was simply not enough to satisfy the dehydration of his entire body. Wei Xiaobei exerted a lot of effort to just open his eyes. He was surprised at how fuzzy his vision was. Anything he looked at seemed to give the impression that his eyes had been covered by a gauze. Even in this situation, Wei Xiaobei was able to perceive with difficulty that he had returned to reality. At the very least, the poster of Zhang Liangying was not tattered anymore. Because of extreme dehydration, Wei Xiaobei had a hard time controlling his body. He felt that if he lost consciousness now, he would never wake up again. With great effort, Wei Xiaobei finally got up from the bed. After getting off the bed, his body swayed as he charged towards the bathroom. He immediately turned the knob on the shower. Following the sound of water moving through the pipes, warm water flowed out like a waterfall onto his head. So pleasant. Even if he did not open his eyes, Wei Xiaobei could feel that as the water came into contact with his skin would greedily absorb it. His body slowly absorbed the water, alleviating its dryness. The feeling was so intense, Wei Xiaobei thought that this was surely the most pleasurable thing in the world. However, it was not enough. Wei Xiaobei moved the nozzle close to his mouth and excitedly swallowed the water until his stomach was full of it. After stuffing his stomach full of water, the moisture rapidly spread from inside out throughout his body as the water passed through his intestines. At the same time, his skin was absorbing water, spreading the water from outside in. With this kind of efficiency, he quickly obtained victory. Under the help of the water, the cells in his body began to resuscitate like a tree when spring arrived. Wei Xiaobei had finally suppressed the dryness in his body. His eyes had also regained clarity, and his vision recovered. However, this was not the end. As he stood under the shower, he could feel that his skin was still absorbing moisture, but he did not know where it was being absorbed to. Since his skin was still absorbing water, he did not leave yet. He once again closed his eyes and looked at his status panel. His trip to the dust world this time was filled with countless danger, and he had even almost lost this lie. However, the bigger the investment, the bigger the gains. Right now, his status panel displayed a total of 1,631 evolution points. This was the highest amount of evolution points he had ever earned in a single trip to the dust world. Naturally, Wei Xiaobei had used this chance to once again confirm that he would return to the place where he entered the dust world when his time inside was up. However, what made him happy was that after bathing in the Yang's blood, he had gained two special skills. Dryness endurance, greatly increased the body's endurance against dryness. This skill formed after Wei Xiaobei bathed in the Yang's blood. Every time the body bathes in Yang's blood, the effect of this skill will increase a bit. Moisture absorption allows the user to use the skin and other body parts to absorb moisture in the air, aiding dryness endurance. This skill formed after Wei Xiaobei bathed in the Yang's blood. Every time the body bathes in Yang's blood, the effect of this skill will increase a bit. Although these two special skills were not as mighty as releasing electricity, it would increase the amount of time Wei Xiaobei could continue fighting by a few folds. It must be known that the amount of time that Wei Xiaobei stayed in the dust world had now exceeded 5 hours. In other words, it would still increase in the future. The amount of drinkable water in the dust world was almost non-existent. Wei Xiaobei still could not live without water yet, and because of this, the special skill was truly a great help. This was much more valuable than the 450 evolution points. Moreover, the moisture absorption skill was also not bad as it increased the length of dryness endurance. Moreover, these two skills could still be upgraded in the future. Every time he bathed in the Yang's blood, these two skills would improve a little. If his moisture absorption increased to a certain level, he might just be able to absorb all the water in a certain radius. If this were to happen, Wei Xiaobei would be a drought creator. Although Wei Xiaobei did not count on this skill to drain a person of all their moisture, just creating a drought would be a lot already. If you thought about it, this ability might even allow him to remove all the water in Lake Chui, allowing him to largely decrease the powers of the monsters hidden inside. After all, even monsters in the dust world required certain environments to live in. Otherwise, those fiendish man-fishes would already be jumping on dry land. In short, Wei Xiaobei was extremely satisfied with these two abilities. Next, he thought about how to use his evolution points. If he did not use his 1631 evolution points, it would turn into a huge waste. Only when these hard-earned evolution points were used would he be able to guarantee his safety inside the dust world. This time, Wei Xiaobei did not hesitate. He concentrated on his agility's sub-attributes. The sub-attributes under agility were two important. His recent trip to the dust world had allowed him to fully acknowledge this. Let alone other points, just the ability to escape against a fast monster was already an absolute advantage. Thinking about it, if his agility had only been at 9 points when he had entered the dust world this time, his encounter with a giant black scorpion would be enough to drive him to drown in liquor. He placed 200 points in every sub-attribute under his agility. Seeing his evolution points decrease by 800 points, he did not ache over it, but only regretted how his evolution points were not enough. If it was possible, Wei Xiaobei hoped to make all the sub-attributes reach 20 points. After this, his agility increased to 15 points. Wei Xiaobei immediately felt warmth spread all throughout his body. Wherever the warmth flowed, the muscles became more flexible, and his body became more graceful. 15 points in agility should now be enough to support his 17.5-point strength. At the very least, Wei Xiaobei felt that his body was so graceful that he could run around on the ceiling. His eyes became even clearer and his hands became more nimble. Wei Xiaobei believed that if a housefly flew by in front of him, even without it stopping, he could easily catch it between his 2 fingers. This was the benefit of raising his agility and its sub-attributes to 15 points. After spending 800 evolution points, Wei Xiaobei still had 831 evolution points left. This time, Wei Xiaobei needed to ponder over how to use them. After probing his new special skills, he was surprised to find out that he could not put evolution points in them. He did not need to put any points in release electricity for now. If he wanted to allow his electricity break through the moist air, he needed to raise it to 1000 volts. Increasing it to 1000 volts would require more than 1800 evolution points. For Wei Xiaobei, this was too much of a commitment. The profit-to-loss ratio was too bad. He felt that 100 volts and 62 milliamperes was enough for now. After all, this special skill was much more useful in reality than in the dust world. As for his Bajiquan, he had just increased it. He still needed a bit more time to adapt to it, train his qi, and open his meridians. Naturally, if he directly placed the evolution points into his Bajiquan now, it would indeed level faster, but the amount that he would need to put in was too uncertain. If he placed 800 points in and there were no results, it would be a waste. After all, placing in evolution points would only increase his realm of understanding. Training his qi would require him to take it step by step. He temporarily also placed the charm attribute to the side for now. After being in contact with his status panel for so long, he knew that charm was not just purely the so-called attractiveness index. It was, after all, formed by the sub-attributes courage, persuasiveness, charm, leadership, and appearance. This so-called attractiveness index was in reality only about the appearance. Charm was the style of execution, an imposing manner of decisiveness. Persuasiveness was a person's eloquence. Character was a person's temperament. Leadership was a person's ability to lead. If Wei Xiaobei was in the era of the hegemonic struggle, then he would have placed his evolution points into his charm attribute first. However, Wei Xiaobei had not yet seen how this attribute would be useful in the mysterious dust world. As a result, he did not put it as a high priority. As for the intelligence attribute, Wei Xiaobei just directly increased his learning to 10 points, using up 92 evolution points and increasing his intelligence to 10.04 points. Next, Wei Xiaobei used 265 evolution points to increase his judgment sub-attribute to 11 points. The best way to describe judgment was an attribute that made use of one's understanding and knowledge to make an analysis and come to a judgment. For example, if a person's judgment and reasoning was very high, then that person would be much more suited towards detective work or criminal police work. If a person's intuition and perception were also high, then the person could already be a famous detective like Conan. Frankly speaking, these 3 sub-attributes complemented the reasoning sub-attribute under intelligence. As for the perception attribute under awareness, it referred to a person's ability to perceive stimulus and information from the world. A person with a high perception would have an ability very close to clairvoyance and superhearing. The movement of the grass and the wind would not be able to escape this person's attention at all. As for intuition, it was a very mysterious attribute. A person with high intuition could foresee incoming danger. They could even judge whether a person they had just met was a threat to them in just a single glance. By increasing these sub-attributes, Wei Xiaobei would be able to tell the difference in the strength between him and an opponent when encountering danger. It could even tell him whether he should run away, how he should run away, and where he should run away to. He could even possibly escape before the danger came or even nip it in the bud if possible. As a result, Wei Xiaobei increased his perception and intuition to 11 points, using up 422 evolution points. Finally, he placed the remaining 56 evolution points into willpower, increasing it to 12.95 points. Willpower was a good sub-attribute. Although it was not helpful in direct battle, its use was hard to predict when fighting strong enemies. In simpler terms, if a normal person encountered a wolf, their legs would weaken, making them lose their ability to defend, and end up being eaten by the wolf. A person with a high willpower, on the other hand, would not go weak in the legs. They would even dare to fight off against the wolf and survive in the end. This was one of the many uses of willpower. It allowed a person to maintain or even increase their battle power when fighting enemies that were several levels stronger than them. After extravagantly using up all his evolution points, Wei Xiaobei's status panel had huge changes. Name: Wei Xiaobei. Race: human. Gender: male. Age: 21. Creature rank: 1 star. Status: the average adult male's status value is 10. Strength: 17.5, muscle: 20.05, elementary power burst, sturdiness: 14.95. Agility: 15, hand-eye coordination: 15, flexibility: 15, reflex: 15, balance: 15. Vitality: 17.21, health: 20.35, elementary regeneration, endurance: 14.06. Intelligence: 10.04, learning: 10, reasoning: 10.08. Awareness: 11.49, willpower: 12.95, judgment: 11, perception: 11, intuition: 11. Charm: 7.83, courage: 10.39. Persuasiveness: 7.39, character: 7.99, leadership: 5.39, appearance: 7.99. Skills: shooting, intermediate, military boxing, intermediate, electrical work, beginner, Bajiquan, perfection, fishing, beginner, 3 Emperor Cannon Fist, beginner. Special skills: release electricity, maximum strength 37 volts. Maximum current 10 mA. This skill formed after Wei Xiaobei ate the Thunderworm electric ball. Maintaining a constant output for a long period could allow this skill to level up. Using this while exercising would stimulate strength and slowly increase agility. Dryness endurance, greatly increase the body's endurance against dryness. This skill formed after Wei Xiaobei bathed in the Yang's blood. Every time the body bathes in Yang's blood, the effect of this skill will increase a bit. Moisture absorption allows the user to use the skin and other body parts to absorb moisture in the air, aiding dryness endurance. This skill formed after Wei Xiaobei bathed in the Yang's blood. Every time the body bathes in Yang's blood, the effect of this skill will increase a bit. Evolution points: 0. Item on hand: white mist knife, sharp, slightly corrosive property, citizen of long bow's leg hair, tough, flexible, Yang's plume X21. Battle log: you killed a 2-star terror creature, Yong. Battle ends. After combing through his status panel, Wei Xiaobei slowly opened his eyes. At this time, his skin had already stopped absorbing moisture. His body's liquid reserves were now full of abundance. Wei Xiaobei was able to roughly calculate that the amount of water that he had absorbed minus the amount absorbed by his cells was more than twice his body weight. However, he did not feel the weight at all. It seems that the dryness endurance special skill is really special. After turning off the shower, Wei Xiaobei did not even use a towel to wipe off. He only lightly stimulated his skin and the water was completely absorbed, making his skin perfectly clean and dry. He lightly smiled knowing that this skill was truly not bad. The only troublesome thing was that after he absorbed the water, he felt his inside swell somewhat, so Wei Xiaobei had to release the extra moisture. Wei Xiaobei lightly sighed at the fact that the dagger and weapons did not follow him back to reality. If those things had truly been brought back, Wei Xiaobei had to think of how to hide them and it would just increase his troubles for no reason. After returning to the bedside, Wei Xiaobei was slightly hungry. He changed into a white shirt and black trousers. If it was not because of his body size, he did not look out of the ordinary. Being low-key was the way of the king. Wei Xiaobei longed for people to not stare at him when he went out. However, his wishes were fruitless. Just after he opened the door and walked out, he saw Zhang Tian and Li Lanxing sitting down on small stools and gossiping in an extremely intimate way. Zhang Tian's name truly fit her. Her smile would make other people have a sense of sweetness hit them, but it was not an annoying feeling. Li Lanxing on the other hand carried herself a little higher. Just from the style of how she did things, if she was placed in ancient times, she would be Hua Mulan. The sound of Wei Xiaobei opening the door attracted the two people's attention. When Li Lanxing saw Wei Xiaobei, her expression became complex, and she spoke something besides Zhang Tian's ears. Although Wei Xiaobei's listening ability was higher thanks to increasing his perception, he could only hear a few words, but his intuition was telling him that her words definitely had something to do with him. Following Li Lanxing's whispers, Zhang Tian's fair cheeks immediately reddened as she glared at Li Lanxing. In contrast to this, Li Lanxing did not exercise restraint, she even pulled Zhang Tian up and shouted towards Wei Xiaobei, "Xiaobei, are you preparing to leave?" Seeing Li Lanxing, Wei Xiaobei's thoughts were a bit complicated. The hallucination of being together with Li Lanxing was too real. Up till now, Wei Xiaobei had not yet forgotten about it. Also, Li Lanxing's boyfriend, Huang Dejun, died inside the dust world. Although Huang Dejun did not die in his hands, Wei Xiaobei still intended to have him eventually killed. As a result, when he saw Li Lanxing, he felt that it was slightly difficult to form words. He felt a bit guilty, but more than that, he felt a strange feeling from within, as if he had been caught stealing something. He also felt a strange heat from his body as if he was about to have another hallucination again. In short, Wei Xiaobei blanked out on the spot until Li Lanxing stood in front of him after pulling Zhang Tian with her. Her face was full of smiles as she spoke, "Xiaobei, Xiaobei." The fair fingers waving in front of him gave him a misconception. He slightly opened his mouth thinking about biting them. Luckily, Zhang Tian summoned her courage and her crisp voice rang out, "Hello, brother Xiaobei. Thank you for helping me before." After saying this, the young maiden's face blushed as Li Lanxing teased her. Only then did Wei Xiaobei come to his senses. He stopped his impulses just in time. Naturally, even if Zhang Tian did not interrupt, Wei Xiaobei would still eventually snap himself out of it, albeit a little slower. That was just a trivial matter. Is something the matter? Wei Xiaobei's expression did not change. He asked with a smile as if this was a normal conversation with a neighbor. "No, nothing. Are you going out?" Zhang Tian asked. "Yeah. I am going to my master's place to do something." After saying this, Wei Xiaobei gestured with his hand and left, but he was able to feel the passionate gazes from behind him. After opening the gate, he walked out. Wei Xiaobei bitterly smiled in his heart. How could he not know the things that were accumulating in Zhang Tian's gaze? If it was before he entered the dust world and he was still working at the Dahao real estate, Wei Xiaobei would have felt very happy. As a man who had yet to marry nor talk about love, being able to obtain a beautiful girlfriend was much more joyous than earning a lot of money. After all, men were visual animals. Mature men who had lots of experience in love would probably demand for kind, honest, or good-hearted women, but the rest would still look at the face when finding a girlfriend. Moreover, although Wei Xiaobei had come in contact with Zhang Tian a few times, he instinctively knew that she was a good girl. In this society that was filled with money, finding a good girl like her was very hard. Wei Xiaobei naturally knew that with his current strength, earning a lot of money and standing out was not a problem. However, he had a slight premonition that if he stopped going into the dust world a huge disaster would strike. This was not from his intuition, but a feeling that appeared when he obtained the status panel. Moreover, as he came and went into the dust world, his life was constantly at the boundary of life and death. This simply prevented him from giving his partner proper happiness. At the very least, Wei Xiaobei did not have that kind of feeling right now. Even if in the future, he felt like being in a relationship, it would probably just be a physiological demand. As a man whose willpower was about to reach 13 points, he was able to suppress these kind of simple desires. Following Wei Xiaobei's departure, the two women suddenly lost interest in continuing their chat. They looked at each other in the eyes, not knowing what kind of thoughts were going in the mind of the other party. Afterwards, they returned to their room without talking. Wei Xiaobei meanwhile, did not know that a misunderstanding was born between the two women. After coming out of the building, he hailed a cab and rode to the dojo. Just as he was entering the dojo, Wei Xiaobei happened to bump into Qing Cici, who was preparing to leave. Senior apprentice sister, Wei Xiaobei spoke with a smile. Junior apprentice brother? Where have you been? Why weren't you answering the phone? I even thought that you had been involved in human trafficking. You worried us to death. As Qing Cici opened her mouth, her grumbling abruptly came out, making Wei Xiaobei smile in embarrassment. It took a while before Qing Cici was pacified. When he entered the dojo, Wei Xiaobei thought that his master and apprentice brothers would investigate him like Qing Cici. In the end, after seeing him, his master only nodded his head and did not inquire further. On the other hand, his big senior apprentice brother and third apprentice brother were only worried about his body. After seeing that nothing was wrong with Wei Xiaobei, they did not bother him anymore. After all, Wei Xiaobei was already an adult. As long as nothing happened to him, his master and apprentice brothers would not investigate his personal matters any further. After returning to his own room, Wei Xiaobei charged his phone and looked at the time. 5 days had actually already passed. It was no wonder why Qing Cici was that worried. At 4 in the early morning of the next day, Wei Xiaobei woke up, left the room, and directly headed towards the practice grounds. There were no people at this time in the practice ground. Even his big senior apprentice brother, who normally woke up the earliest, could not be seen. This though, was natural since his big senior apprentice brother only wakes up 30 minutes after 6. Wei Xiaobei chose a strong tree and did a few breathing exercises. He stood straight, placed his hands on his waist, widened his legs parallel to his shoulders, straightened his back and pushed out his chest. He closed his eyes and breathed deeply as he focused on his dantian. He threw out all distracting thoughts, inhaled and exhaled to cleanse his body and rid himself of impurities. After a few minutes, his mind entered a peaceful state. The sleepiness from waking up was disappearing without a trace. Wei Xiaobei changed his stance to a qigong stance. His thoughts sunk deep within himself, urging his qi to slowly move inside his dantian. Following the circulation of the qi, the uncontrollable qi was beginning to be absorbed by the qi inside his dantian. Perhaps because of the gap between the outside and the inside of his dantian, the uncontrollable qi began flowing toward his dantian. In the end, it had collected in the middle of his dantian. This cycle moved step by step. At this point in time, Wei Xiaobei had already rid himself of all outside distractions. Following the passage of time, his qi continued to expand. In the end, Wei Xiaobei's spirit was quite spent, but his qi could not be described as a simple thread anymore. Under his efforts, his qi had already occupied half of his dantian. The time Wei Xiaobei cultivated his qi came to an end as he resisted the dizziness coming from his mind. He returned back to his room while coincidentally meeting his big senior apprentice brother, who had just woken up, along the way. Seeing that Wei Xiaobei was rocking from side to side, his big senior apprentice brother worriedly said a few words. After hearing that it was caused by excessive qi cultivation, his opened mouth almost made Wei Xiaobei laugh. The amount of time his big senior apprentice brother had been following his master was very long. From that time until now, it was almost 20 years. As a result, he was already at the realm of negative Jing, so he was not a stranger to cultivating qi. However, Wei Xiaobei had only been there for 3 months, yet he had already reached the state negative Jing and had started to cultivate qi. This had truly shocked him. This gave his big senior apprentice brother the feeling of a new student he had just began instructing, entering college without going through elementary. Naturally, his big senior apprentice brother had already developed a slight immunity against Wei Xiaobei's surprises. After telling Wei Xiaobei to rest well, he began to train under a tree. Wei Xiaobei fell down onto his bed as soon as he returned to his room and fell asleep in an instant. His master and Qing Ci had also checked on him during this period of time. When his master came in, he tried to feel his pulse. After seeing that everything was in order and the pulse was vigorous, he left relieved. As for the reason why Qing Ci came in, it was to call Wei Xiaobei for breakfast. However, after seeing that Wei Xiaobei was unwakeable, she could only leave angrily. Wei Xiaobei slept peacefully, and only woke up when it was time for lunch. In an instant, Wei Xiaobei had slept for more than 5 hours. Although his temples were aching after he woke up, his spirit consumption had made up for this inconvenience. After taking a look at his dantian, he noticed that the first time he trained in reality exceeded the time he trained in the dust world by more than a few times. This made him quite happy. If it was not because it was lunch time, he would have began to train a bit more. After eating lunch, Wei Xiaobei found out that Qing Ci's freshman military training had ended, and that school had officially begun. Qing Ci would return every Friday afternoon to the dojo, and go back to school on the Sunday afternoon. Qing Ci, compared to most girls nowadays, was a perfect virtuous woman. Once she returned to the dojo, she immediately washed the master's and apprentice brother's clothes. Moreover, she even cooked the meals. The only weakness was that her mouth was unforgiving. Wei Xiaobei, himself, had already experienced this countless times. After seeing their difficulty of cooking meals when she left for college, she hurriedly went out after lunch to go to the employment center to find a cook for them. His master followed convention and boiled tea. He sat in front of the chessboard to analyze the desperate situation. His big senior apprentice brother went for a nap, and as for Wei Xiaobei, he once again returned to the practice grounds. It was already past the autumn equinox. Compared to the summer, the climate at this time was pleasantly cool. The small period of time after the autumn equinox was one of the most comfortable times of the year. Wei Xiaobei felt extremely comfortable as the cool breeze softly blew past his body. It did not make him drowsy or cold at all. Since he had just finished eating lunch, he sat down in a lotus position in front of the tree and practiced breathing techniques. Breathing techniques did not put any importance into posture. You could stand, sit, or lie down. Some Guoshu experts even trained while they were asleep. This kind technique was used to stimulate internal organs and train them. It also increased the amount of qi flowing inside his body. After half an hour, Wei Xiaobei felt that the feeling of fullness had disappeared. He slowly stood up and began to train again by sinking his thoughts into his dantian. Perhaps because his Bajiquan had already reached pretty much perfection, he felt that his chi was much more abundant compared to how much his master had described it was during the initial stages of negative Jing. The chi in his dantian began to circulate as he honed in on it and began to absorb the uncontrollable chi, expanding again. After half an hour, the chi had fully occupied his dantian. The uncontrollable chi outside could no longer easily enter his dantian anymore. Wei Xiaobei recalled the things his master had told him about cultivating qi. After recalling this, he knew that the next step was to urge his qi to move through his blood channels. This was one of Guoshu's traditional training techniques. When the qi inside the dantian was full, it needed to be moved all throughout the body using the 12 blood channels. The so-called 12 blood channels referred to the 3 on each hand and the 3 on each foot. Urging the qi to move through the blood channels would stimulate the blood, link up the internal organs, expand the blood channels, clean the internal organs, and also strengthen the muscles, bones, skin, blood, etc. As for the opening of governor and conception vessels described in various wuxia novels, it was in fact referring to the qi moving through the acupuncture points. This was one step after urging the qi to move through the blood channels. The process of urging the qi to move through the blood channels must reach a certain level before being able to move it through acupuncture points. The main purpose of training the acupuncture points was to gain the 8 extra meridians. These 8 meridians were different from the 12 channels. It not only affected the internal organs, but it also affected the relationship between internal and external organs. In the past, these things were originally called extra channels due to their limited knowledge of Chinese traditional medicine. It was only when powerful Guoshu experts developed them did everyone find out their use. The 12 channels was the place where blood and qi normally moved. It was a natural pathway that even normal people have, albeit it may be a little narrower. However, the 8 extra meridians were naturally blocked ever since birth. Operating these 8 meridians would require using qi to forcefully open them. After opening them, these 8 meridians could link up with the 12 blood channels and allow a finer adjustment of accumulated qi and blood. In short, opening the 8 meridians would make the blood channels stronger and also strengthen qi. As for how this actually happened, Wei Xiaobei had not yet reached this stage, so everything he knew about it had only came from his master. Just from observing his master when he would occasionally demonstrate his skill, Wei Xiaobei imagined that the benefits of opening the 8 meridians was not small. It must be known that his master did not have a status panel, but his master was able to play around with Wei Xiaobei. Urging the qi to move around the blood channel was done by circulating qi in them. Opening the meridians, on the other hand, would require him to use qi to open the acupuncture points. Although the processes were similar, they were also different. As his thoughts continued to run, Wei Xiaobei moved his qi all over his body. As he examined the inside of his body, Wei Xiaobei felt a powerful qi appear in his body. After a slight nudge with his thought, the qi naturally moved around all of his acupuncture points, completing a cycle. In this period of time, the uncontrollable qi passed throughout his body, and a huge portion of the accumulated qi in his dantian had been devoured by it. However, Wei Xiaobei could feel the benefits in his body after the uncontrollable qi finished a cycle throughout his blood channels. There were 54 acupuncture points in his blood channels. The amount of uncontrollable qi that was produced was not small. At this time, Wei Xiaobei finally understood that urging qi to flow into his blood channels was not only to clean the internal organs but also to increase the amount of uncontrollable qi flowing throughout his body. By increasing the amount of qi in his body, it would help in opening the 8 meridians later. However, what caught him unprepared was that when he began another cycle and had his qi pass through the foot's kidney channel, heat rose from his lower body, making it hard and swollen. This was a symptom of a natural occurrence among men, morning wood. Since it was like this, Wei Xiaobei couldn't help but stop training and stood up. He quickly walked to the toilet and relieved himself. While he was in the toilet, he pondered why this kind of phenomenon happened. The foot's kidney channel included the kidneys, lungs, and throat, but the main feature was the kidneys. As a result, when moving qi into the foot's kidney channel, internal organs related to the kidney would show a clear reaction. In reality, Wei Xiaobei did not know that this was not caused by defects in his kidney. If his kidney really had problems, the symptoms would be different. Afterwards, he returned to his former position and circulated the uncontrollable qi again. He tried it a few times, but every time the qi passed through the foot's kidney channel, he needed to go to the toilet to relieve the symptoms. However, the symptoms were getting less pronounced and weaker. When it came to his foot's liver channel, the symptom that appeared was a burning sensation in his liver. Soon, it became very painful, as if something was slowly being removed from inside of him. Wei Xiaobei knew that he loved to drink. He had even smoked when he was in the army. The toxins from those habits were most likely absorbed into his liver. As a result, this kind of symptom appeared. After cycling the uncontrollable qi 7 to 8 times around his blood channels, Wei Xiaobei could not continue to do so anymore as his head became dizzy. He then stopped cultivating and began training his techniques and great spear. In the next few days, Wei Xiaobei repeated the same cycle of circulating his qi and training. During this time of cultivation, he had encountered many different kinds of symptoms that were sometimes strange. When moving the qi to his hand's lung channel, he spat out black blood. This should be an indicator of it cleansing his lungs. When moving qi to his foot's bladder channel, he felt the need to go urinate. He would urge his qi to move through his blood channels twice a day. After a month, the amount of strange symptoms that Wei Xiaobei encountered had greatly decreased. Moreover, he could feel that the involved organs had become much more healthier and vigorous. This was something that his health attribute could not address. These were all problems he had before he obtained the status panel. Even the health attribute could only heal injuries. At this point in time, Wei Xiaobei had a bit more confidence in attempting to open his meridians. On this day, the cold winds were chilling. Wei Xiaobei still woke up early, arrived under the big tree, and cleaned his internal organs with breathing techniques. After entering a calm state, he sunk into deep thought, and he began absorbing the uncontrollable qi into his dantian. The qi that was occupying his dantian had been heavily saturated. After cramming his dantian full, it had automatically stopped absorbing the uncontrollable qi. At this time, Wei Xiaobei carefully circulated his qi toward his yinjiao acupuncture point. Just as previously said, the 8 extra meridians had been blocked ever since birth. As a result, circulating qi to unblock it and its channels would be very difficult. Luckily, this blocked channel was originally unimpeded before birth. As a result, whenever the qi charged forward to challenge the blockade, the blocked channel would be forced open a bit. Every time the qi collided with the blocked channel, it would decrease by a bit. In reality, the reason why the qi was weakened because it had to hold up the channel to prevent it from closing again. This process of opening the meridian was like having his body cut open by a knife or chopped by an axe. In an instant, Wei Xiaobei's forehead was drenched with beads of sweat. If it was another person who had not experienced such intense pain before, the qi that they were controlling would have dispersed due to carelessness. The most severe case would be entering a state of near death. For Wei Xiaobei, the pain was terrible, but it was nothing compared to the pain that he experienced from muscle reconstruction. This was one of the difficulties of cultivation. A normal person would not even be able to endure this kind of pain. They would not even have the energy to open their meridians. Reaching the peak of negative Jing and earning a small success in cultivation after 30 years was already not a bad accomplishment. When the qi had diminished to about 30%, Wei Xiaobei finally opened the yinjiao acupuncture point. While using his inner sight, he saw that the yinjiao acupuncture point was a muddy chaos. When he tried to hit the yinjiao acupuncture point, the muddy exterior would block the qi and bounce it back. This hit had decreased the qi, leaving it with only 10% of its original amount. Just like that, Wei Xiaobei could not help but return his qi to his dantian and once again let it absorb the uncontrollable qi. After it had recovered, he once again urged the qi to move through the blood channel and charge toward the Yinjiao acupuncture point. This was something he must do. If he did not open it now, the blood channel would slowly close up, wasting his time. Boom! This time, the amount of qi that he lost while passing through the blood channel had decreased, and he once again tried to hit the Yinjiao acupuncture point, directly decreasing the muddiness to 30%. But, his qi had also decreased to less than 30%. Boom! His qi once again charged forth, decreasing the muddiness. After 3 hits, there was only a layer of muddiness left. Pop! With 10% of his qi left, he once again made it hit against the muddiness, completely shattering it this time. Now, only a small strand of qi was left. He sent this small strand of qi toward the Yinjiao acupuncture point. This had immediately created a path between his dantian and his Yinjiao acupuncture point. At this time, Wei Xiaobei felt a bit dizzy. He couldn't help but stop and stand up. Urging qi to move through the blood channels was different from opening the meridians. It was possible to circulate the qi through the blood channels every day, but opening the meridians was different. After opening the meridian, it took a bit of time to stabilize the path between the acupuncture point and the dantian. This had prevented Wei Xiaobei from immediately opening another meridian. Just like that, Wei Xiaobei did not waste any more time in the dojo. He called up Captain Zheng of the Dehao security firm. Captain Zheng never expected Wei Xiaobei to call him at all. The training period for the first batch of security guards was finished after all, and the second batch was still in its proposal stage. However, when he heard Wei Xiaobei speak, he knew that Wei Xiaobei wanted to fight in the Lulan Club's underground fight club again. Previously, Wei Xiaobei did not leave a way for Lulan Club to contact him. As a result, there was no means of communication between the Lulan Club and Wei Xiaobei. Wei Xiaobei was not willing to disturb his senior apprentice brother, so he directly called Captain Zheng. Although Captain Zheng did not work in the Lulan Club, it was not difficult for him to set up these kinds of matters. He quickly gave Wei Xiaobei a number. "This is little Zhou's number, the one you met last time." Wei Xiaobei did not think too much about it and just called up the number. The voice on the other side of the phone was familiar. Wei Xiaobei tried to recall the last time he went to the Lulan Club and remembered the young man that was with him. They had indeed met before. As for the last time he had fought in the Lulan Club, it was this little Zhou that had brought him to the stage. Since they had met before, the conversation between them was much more relaxed. Wei Xiaobei went to the Lulan Club and met up with him. They both rode in an electric-powered vehicle and entered the Lulan Club. In this period of time, this little Zhou handed Wei Xiaobei his business card. What was written on it was his name and occupation: Zhou Yuanming, Lulan Club Foreign Affairs Assistant. Wei Xiaobei slightly smiled. These business cards from the underground fight club were only a cover-up. What was a foreign affairs assistant? This simply meant someone on the managing side of the underground fighting business. After a while, the vehicle stopped by the lobby. After signing the contract and changing clothes, Wei Xiaobei was guided by Zhou Yuanming to wait on the path again. The noises that came from the other side of the curtain were as diverse as ever. The two contestants that were fighting on stage were the Lion King from Rwanda and the White Bear from Russia. After a short while, the fighting on stage ended. The Russian man was carried out of the stage. Wei Xiaobei cast him a light glance. The White Bear truly looked strong, but there was a bloody fist mark on his chest. From the deepness of the wound, the attack had shattered the White Bear's ribs. It might have even damaged his heart. As a result, the White Bear did not budge. This was another human life. Wei Xiaobei inwardly sighed, but he turned his eyes to the front again. This was the fate of underground fighters. As long as one still stood on stage, then death was just waiting close by. Wei Xiaobei's opponent was a Japanese newcomer, human twisting killing machine. He was a fatty that weighed more than 150 kilograms. Ever since he first fought, he had won 9 times. Although the fatty was fat, his entire body was made up of all muscle. From his previous battles, it was said that he had caught his opponents and strangled them to death. The battle between the fatty and Wei Xiaobei did not even need to be described. After testing each other for 3 minutes, Wei Xiaobei hit the fatty with an iron mountain lean. The fatty was sent flying towards the cage, killing his opponent. For Wei Xiaobei, this match was not meaningless. Other than obtaining a lot of money, he was also able to refine his techniques during the fights, but his opponent was a letdown. The difference between their strength was too big. When it came to the fatty, he was only an underground fighter at the positive Jing level. He relied on his weight to resist attacks and let out powerful blows. On the stage, his win rate was big, but he was completely crushed by Wei Xiaobei, who was already at the negative Jing level with 17 points in strength and 15 points in agility. Wei Xiaobei had completely surpassed his opponent in terms of power, speed, flexibility, and other factors. From any angle, Wei Xiaobei had far surpassed a normal person's parameters. Even if a normal person were to take stimulants and dope themselves up, they would not be able to even reach Wei Xiaobei's toes. 160,000. This was Wei Xiaobei's reward. Zhou Yuanming had even thought of representing the Lu Lan Club to sign a 5-year contract with Wei Xiaobei. In the contract, Wei Xiaobei will represent the Lu Lan Club in a few fights. He could even be sent abroad to join the World Underground fighting competitions. Moreover, the reward was not small. Every year Wei Xiaobei would be given 1 million yuan, and this amount did not even include his appearance pay. He would also be paid 3 years of reward during signing. In other words, as long as Wei Xiaobei was willing to sign the contract, he would immediately get 3 million yuan as a reward. And this did not even include the appearance fee that would be added. If it was a different underground fighter, they would not even think of rejecting the contract. Who would not be willing to earn 5 million yuan? However, Wei Xiaobei rejected the contract in front of the amazed Zhou Yuanming. He was not rejecting it because the money was too small. After all, as someone who worked for a real estate company before, 5 million yuan was truly a shocking amount. However, if he was still working at the real estate company, he would never have earned this much money in his entire life. Even in underground fights, with Wei Xiaobei not being famous enough, it would take at least 30 wins before he could earn that much money. 150 to 160,000 was the limit of such a local arena like the Lu Lan Club. Wei Xiaobei was not too greedy for money anymore. Even if he had that much money, dying as he risked his life in the dust world would make it all useless. Having just the right amount of money to use was already good enough for him. After leaving the Lu Lan Club, Wei Xiaobei checked the amount of money in his ATM card. Because Wei Xiaobei did not spend much these past days, the amount of money he had in his account had now reached 270,000 yuan. Wei Xiaobei laughed at himself. If he worked as he did before and saved 200 yuan a month, who knew how long it would take to reach this amount of money? After returning to the dojo, Wei Xiaobei lied down on the bed and thought of a question. It had been a long time since he had called home. He woke up early the next day and trained. After eating breakfast, he greeted his master and then left the dojo. When he came to the bank, he hesitated for a bit, and eventually sent 50,000 yuan back home. Originally, he had planned to send back 200,000 yuan, since he was not going to use the money anyway. 70,000 yuan was already enough for him to live on for the next few years. Moreover, the situation back at home was quite serious. His father, Wei Xiangdong, used to be a normal worker at a state-run industrial plant. His mother Xiao Hong was an elementary school teacher. Wei Xiaobei had a little brother and little sister below him. His little brother, Wei Xiaopeng, was a third-year senior high school student, while his little sister, Wei Xiaoyun, was a third-year middle school student. With 2 studying youths back home, the amount of money needed to pay for books and school needs was not small. Also, if Wei Xiaopeng entered college, the expenditure would be even greater. Adding on to the situation, when Wei Xiaobei had just retired from the army, his father's workplace had gone bankrupt and had to be reorganized. After being laid off, they could only rely on their mother's wage. This was also the reason why Wei Xiaobei ran to Chuihu City to find work. Though this was the case, even if their home needed money, if Wei Xiaobei just sent 200,000 yuan directly, his parents would become worried. However, when Wei Xiaobei called back home, he was still not able to escape his mother's nagging, "My eldest child, where did you get so much money? Could it be that you did something bad?" Wei Xiaobei bitterly smiled. His mother still loved to nag. However, compared to the time he was still studying, he did not feel annoyed at her nagging now. Her mother was correct that this money did not come from doing good things. The money was covered in blood. However, Wei Xiaobei was not a saint. He was also risking his life to earn this money. If he lost, his life would also be lost. As a result, he had a clear conscience towards this money. After persuading his mother for a while, his mother was finally calmed down. He told her that he was not working a normal job anymore. He had already entered into discipleship under the Qing clan dojo. He also told her that the money came from martial arts competitions that he joined. This had let his mother feel at ease. In truth, this was the first time Wei Xiaobei lied to his mother, but the result this time was not bad. At the very least, his mother was not that worried anymore. However, in the next instant, his mother made a request, and that was for Wei Xiaobei to attend a marriage interview. The reason was because Wei Xiaobei was already 24 years old. Most of Wei Xiaobei's classmates had already married. This request made Wei Xiaobei's scalp tingle. The image of the 2 families in a coffee shop entered his brain. "Mom, I am still young. There is no need for this yet, right?" For a moment, Wei Xiaobei's mind was in disarray. He felt as if he could not find the words to dodge this issue. However, his mother did not force him. She only told him that he must return before Chinese New Year. It was currently the 27th of October. In other words, Wei Xiaobei had at most 3 months to return and go to the marriage interview. Wei Xiaobei had no other choice in this matter anymore, so it was decided that he had to return before Chinese New Year. If it was only returning for Chinese New Year, Wei Xiaobei would be very happy, but thinking that he had to attend a marriage interview once he returned gave him a big headache. After hanging up, Wei Xiaobei walked to the nearest supermarket and bought a few things before directly returning to his apartment. Wei Xiaobei finally snapped out of it when he lied down on the bed. He should have told her that he had a girlfriend already, but if he did that his mother would have surely asked to bring her back. If it was like that, he needed to ask either Zhang Tian or Li Lanxing for help. When he thought about it, he felt like he was about to vomit blood. He thought that a melodramatic plot might fall upon him like those TV shows that were shown on the television. He thought about what would happen if he rented a girlfriend to deal with this problem. If it was Zhang Tian, then it would not be bad. Wei Xiaobei knew that she had a good opinion of him. The only question was whether the other party would agree or not. After all, this matter was only a transaction. For a girl, this could also be seen as Wei Xiaobei having some sort of interest in her. Li Lanxing, on the other hand, would subconsciously remind Wei Xiaobei of Huang Dejun's death. Now that Li Lanxing was single again, he could ask her for help. However, in reality, Li Lanxing did not know that Huang Dejun was dead. Moreover, Wei Xiaobei did not know how Li Lanxing had actually felt about Huang Dejun. What a headache! Wei Xiaobei threw this pain in the ass to the back of his mind. He lied down on the bed and did some breathing techniques to calm his mind. It had already been a month since he last entered the dust world, so he did not know what the situation was currently like in there. He did not know why, but he held a strange expectation within him. He extended his hand, grabbed a bottle, and twisted the cap open. The clear liquor brought out a rich and mellow taste as he drank it. This liquor was made by the Chue Wine Factory and was stored in their cellars for 10 years. Although it could not be compared to famous wine brands, it was still well known for its rich and mellow flavor. Wei Xiaobei did not lack money, so he bought this wine and decided to enjoy his drinking from now on. After a bottle, Wei Xiaobei felt slightly dizzy, but he was still far from directly falling asleep. This made him bitterly smile. With his vitality exceeding 17 points and reaching the negative Jing level, liquor with 57% alcohol content was not even enough to get him drunk. Luckily, there was a promotion on this liquor. Buy 5 take 1. And Wei Xiaobei had bought 20 bottles of it, so there were a total of 24 bottles. As a result, he was not worried that he would not have enough to drink. After another bottle, he felt the dizziness become stronger. Only when he finished the third bottle did he finally fall asleep. Wei Xiaobei felt that good wine was truly different. He shook his head, and although he did not feel comfortable, there was no feeling of a headache coming as a result of drinking too much. After leaping up from bed, he steadied his thoughts. Sure enough, he had returned to the dust world and appeared inside his apartment. On the way to the desert, Wei Xiaobei began forming a question. Should I try entering the dust world from a different place? However, he immediately dispelled this thought as it was simply too dangerous. Locations in reality and the dust world did not match. If he entered the dust world from a different place and appeared at the bottom of Lake Chui or perhaps the hideout of the citizen of Longbo, he had really played himself hard. At the very least, before his power reached a certain level, he could not even entertain this question. With a safe location, he temporarily did not need to try other places just yet. After jumping up the walls and passing through the streets, he once again reached the desert. Wei Xiaobei lightly exhaled. He thought about the mercenaries that he had previously encountered, hoping that he would not meet such a strange situation again. His journey in the desert was not that smooth sailing. The path that he had previously cleared up was once again filled with giant black scorpions. However, he was still able to deal with these giant black scorpions easily due to his previous experience. When a scorpion approached Wei Xiaobei about to attack, Wei Xiaobei did not move at all. He only reached out with his left hand and grabbed at the underside of the stinger. With a light chop, the tail was cleanly cut off. Next, Wei Xiaobei swung the tail and smashed the scorpion to the ground. His left leg raised high, almost to his shoulder, and then unleashed its force on the scorpion's head. A huge shockwave instantly smashed the scorpion's shell to pieces, with even the soft tissue inside turning into minced meat. After receiving this attack, the giant black scorpion was still alive, but it was already close to death. As he moved onwards, Wei Xiaobei had already killed 6 giant black scorpions and was once again in the vicinity of the fiery red mountain range. If Wei Xiaobei had wasted a bit more time in the valley, he would have obtained even more evolution points. However, he was much more concerned about the Yong's corpse. He wanted to see if he could possibly gain more benefits from it. As a result, he temporarily gave up on farming more evolution points. When Wei Xiaobei arrived at the spot of the corpse, he gloomily noticed that the 5-meter-tall Yong had turned into skeleton. It looked as if a single touch would be enough to make the entire skeleton collapse, becoming bones fragments that could even be carried away by the wind. Bone fragments like that did not have any worth. Wei Xiaobei did not know if this was a change caused by the dust world or because of some other kind of monster. Before Wei Xiaobei could decide whether to advance or return back, he saw a sand dune 1,000 meters away suddenly collapse. Soon, a field of bronze-colored thing moved towards the fiery red mountain range. Bronze-colored? When the bronze-colored thing was about 500 meters away from him, Wei Xiaobei made out that it was made up of many bugs. Could this be similar to the beetles that appeared in Lake Chui? If they were like those black beetles from Lake Chwe, he was not too worried. After all, an individual black beetle was weak. The only reason why he was a little worried about the black beetles was because of their numbers. However, regardless whatever he thought, Wei Xiaobei did not dare lower his guard. He ran parallel to the bronze beetles. Because the color was different to the black beetles, when they were 200 meters apart, he was able to clearly see the beetles' appearance. Compared to the black beetles hidden in Lake Chwe, these beetles looked more like beetles. Their entire body was covered in shiny carapace. Their 6 legs also each appeared to be powerful and robust. Their mouths also had pincers on them, but their body size seemed to be much bigger than the size of the black beetles. Every beetle was as big as 2 human fists. Wei Xiaobei lightly poked the group of beetles with his great spear. After hitting one of them, the beetle immediately split open. Wei Xiaobei was then able to get their names from the battle log. Battle log. You encountered 1-star elite creature Sacred Beetle Descendant. You killed a Sacred Beetle Descendant. Sacred Beetle Descendant. Wei Xiaobei's mind began to dig deep into his memory and found the origin of the sacred beetles. Whether it was reality or legends, these sacred beetles exist. In reality, these sacred beetles were a famous dung beetle. Their food was human excrement, making them one of nature's greatest contributor. In Egyptian legends, sacred beetles were creatures that symbolized rebirth. In ancient Egypt, when pharaohs were buried, a stone scarab would be placed over their heart. The purpose was hoping that their pharaohs would be reborn like the sacred beetle. In relation to Christianity, scarabs were also high creatures. Some said that while Jesus was nailed on the cross, he held onto a small beetle that was bathed in his blood. As a result, it had gained holy powers. As a result, the word sacred was added to its name. These beetles that were moving like a tide were most likely descendants of the sacred beetle. As a 1-star elite class creature, the soul beetle had provided him with 5 evolution points. 5 evolution points, no matter how small it sounded, should not simply be underestimated. It must be known that even if they were 1-star elite class creatures, they were still beetles. The black beetles that came out from Lake Chwe had only given him 0.25 evolution points, and these sacred beetle descendants gave him a lot more. When Wei Xiaobei previously thrusted his great spear, even though he did not use that much force, he was still able to feel the huge rebound from the carapace. The force behind a thrust from Wei Xiaobei was not at all small. If it was a normal person, their full power thrust would be equivalent to a simple thrust from him. In other words, a normal person would need to use their full force to be able to kill one of the sacred beetle descendants. Compared to the black beetles in Lake Chwe, these sacred beetle descendants were much more powerful. However, Wei Xiaobei did not have the time to explore this matter any further. After he attacked, the beetles increased their speed. Their originally slow crawling pace increased by several fold. In a few breaths, they had crawled under Wei Xiaobei's feet, and some of them even climbed up Wei Xiaobei's tattered pants. When one of the beetles touched his skin, it did not hesitate at all and fiercely bit on his leg. Tear. Wei Xiaobei could not help suck in cold air. He stamped on the ground and retreated 20 meters from the beetle-infested ground. At the same time, he swatted the 8 beetles that had been clinging onto his legs. After inspecting the injury, there was only a small incision due to the limitations on the beetle's jaw. By the time he looked at it, it had already closed up after letting out a bit of blood, and it did not seem to be poisonous. Naturally, if he had given the beetles more time, then it still would not have been a problem even if they tore off a piece of his flesh. From what he saw, eliminating the beetles surely and steadily was the best way to gain evolution points. However, he quickly gave up this thought after surveying his surroundings. The tide of beetles that was moving toward the fiery red mountain range had reached a length of more than 3,000 meters and a width of more than 300 meters. In other words, if Wei Xiaobei escaped now, he would have a chance to leave, but if he stayed and fought with them, he would die without any chance of escape. Luckily, Wei Xiaobei was not an indecisive person. He instantly chose to turn around and head towards the fiery red mountain range, moving diagonally to the tide of beetles. From his calculations, if there were no accidents on the way, he would be able to reach the mountain before the beetles. Naturally, the danger and risks of the place was not small. After all, other than the scarlet pheasant, there were also much more dangerous creatures around the mountain range. And Wei Xiaobei had already known about this fact. Thump thump thump, rustle rustle rustle. Wei Xiaobei dragged the great spear as he continued to charge forward. Looking at him from any perspective, his actions were incredibly dangerous. 20 to 30 meters away from Wei Xiaobei, the bronze tide was sweeping over everything, covering everything in sight. When a giant black scorpion suddenly popped up in fright, it had instantly been covered by the beetles as soon as it appeared. The sound of chewing could instantly be heard, and the scorpion's erect tail at the same time, had instantly dropped down. When the tide passed, only a few pieces of hard carapace was left. Although the giant black scorpion was an inferior being in Wei Xiaobei's eyes, it was still a terrifying monster in reality. If let the chance, it could even kill 7 to 8 people in a single breath. However, in front of the sacred beetle descendants, these kinds of terrifying monsters were just dregs that vanished in an instant. Wei Xiaobei knew that if he fell on the tide of beetles, his end would be too horrifying to imagine. These sacred beetle descendants could not be compared to normal dung beetles at all. With their strength, even the giant black scorpion's steel-like carapace was gnawed clean by them. Moreover, they seemed to be resistant to poison. After eating the giant black scorpions, none of them seemed to have died. However, Wei Xiaobei did not have time to ponder their might anymore. He did not dare stop moving at all. In fact, every time he moved, grains of sand would actually fly behind him solely due to his speed. Wei Xiaobei was able to travel a few kilometers in just a short amount of time. The closer he got to the mountain range, the higher the temperature became. When he was about 50 meters from the mountain range, the air temperature had increased to about 60 degrees Celsius. This temperature was enough to make the majority of people feel scalding. Even Wei Xiaobei could feel that the air he was breathing in was like boiling water. From this, it was easy to know that those mercenaries were truly elites. Their bodies could endure such a temperature and had even moved towards the mountain range as they escaped for their lives. Naturally, this was done for survival, so letting out potential that normally would be impossible was natural. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. When the tide of beetles were about to make it to the fiery red mountain range, Wei Xiaobei too took large strides towards the mountain. His body soared as he landed on the mountain wall. He relied on his balance and moved 100 meters along the mountain wall. When he landed on the ground, he had just narrowly escaped the beetles' tide of death. When he landed on the ground, Wei Xiaobei felt a sharp pain on his foot. His originally worn-out sports shoes were now emitting a strange smell. Just as he was taking off his sports shoes, a small group of beetles from the tide of beetles that had began climbing the mountain, moved toward him. The injury below his foot was not that severe as there were only a few blisters. Wei Xiaobei used the dagger to cut off the blisters and the wounds immediately closed. He would only need a few hours for the injury to fully heal. The temperature of the mountain had exceeded Wei Xiaobei's estimate. At the very least, it seemed to be more than 200 degrees Celsius. Otherwise, no matter how worn out his sports shoes were, the mountain wall would normally not be able to melt it. However, Wei Xiaobei did not care about the injury anymore, because at this time, a portion of the beetles were coming towards him. Without a doubt, Wei Xiaobei was like a delicacy in this barren desert for them. So they naturally were reluctant to let him escape. Naturally, the beetles that were moving towards Wei Xiaobei were only a drop in the ocean compared to the tide of beetles. Most of the sacred beetle descendants were climbing up the mountain range. Wherever they passed, the rare red plants were gnawed clean, and even some of the soil had disappeared. They were like army ants. Anything that blocked their way, be it animals or plants, were turned into their food. Even the temperature that had now exceeded 200 degrees Celsius did not stop their advancement. This was the most frightening thing about them. After dodging the huge tide, the few thousands that were chasing after Wei Xiaobei did not scare him at all. He pulled the sacred beetle descendants 200 meters away from the tide, and then thrust his spear at them, killing one in the process. The sacred beetle descendants' carapaces were hard yet flexible, but when the sharp spear head came down on them, even they could not escape the fate of dying. Whoosh! The great spear swept across the sand, killing 7 beetles in the process. With another sweep, Wei Xiaobei killed the beetles that were just about to flap their wings to ambush him. From this moment, the beetles seemed to have gained enlightenment. When they were 5 meters from Wei Xiaobei, they would flap their wings and jump. Every second or two, more than 20 beetles were jumping towards Wei Xiaobei at a time, causing his previously skillful movements to be unable to catch up. In an instant, more than 10 beetles landed on Wei Xiaobei's body and were about to bite him. Release electricity. Just as the beetles were opening their jaws and about to bite him, Wei Xiaobei released his electricity. Wei Xiaobei waited for the moment the beetles touched his body, and only then did the effects of electricity become stronger. With a flash of electric light, the sacred beetle descendants were shocked to the ground, but in just a few moments, they shook their bodies and once again pounced on him again. Without a doubt, 101 volts and 62 milliamperes were only enough to numb the beetles for a while and could not kill them. After all, beetles had a different body structure compared to humans. As a result, something that could cause great harm to humans might not necessarily cause great harm to the beetles. In simpler terms, cockroaches and sacred beetles were both dirt eaters. Moreover, if a cockroach's head was chopped off, it could still live for 9 days and die only because of lack of nutrition. From this, it could be seen that the sacred beetles had a strong vitality. The only reason Wei Xiaobei was able to kill the few sacred beetles previously was because of the strong impact from the spearhead, causing the beetle to be completely crushed. As a result, Wei Xiaobei no longer dared to let the beetles surround him. He turned around and retreated 100 meters and looked at his status panel. At this time, Wei Xiaobei had 380 evolution points. Wei Xiaobei planned to place his evolution points into agility. However, after facing wave after wave of 20 to 30 sacred beetles, he realized the effect of increasing his agility would not be that big. After hesitating for a bit, he concentrated on the release electricity skill's voltage. His evolution points quickly decreased, while the voltage increased until 291 volts. Kill! Wei Xiaobei wielded his spear and counterattacked. The previous battle seemed to have excited and even trained the sacred beetle's ability to fly. When they were now less than 20 meters apart, the sacred beetles would soar up in the air and glide towards Wei Xiaobei. Wei Xiaobei was not an idiot and would not get caught off guard as easily as second time. He thrust his spear at them. Although he was able to kill the beetles like this, its efficiency was too low. Facing simultaneous attacks of more than 10 beetles, even if he could thrust it out 10 times, it would not be able to kill all of them. As a result, he changed his strategy. He bent his spear and then released it. The spear head shot out into an arc in midair. In an instant, it swatted 5 of the incoming beetles away. Afterwards, he swung the great spear, sending the majority of the incoming beetles to the ground. The last remaining beetle landed on his shoulder. When it was just about to bite him, electricity surged into its body, making it fall to the ground. What surprised Wei Xiaobei was that 291 volts of electricity was still not enough to kill it at all, so he had no choice but to stomp on it to kill it. Seeing that the beetles that he had swatted down before began to fly up again, Wei Xiaobei frowned. His Bajiquan was already at the state of perfection, so just shaking his spear and swinging it would be and not kill normal insects, but it was still not enough against the sacred beetles. If his negative Jing was a level higher, killing these beetles would not have been as big of a problem. Whoosh! Whoosh! With 2 thrusts, he killed 2 of the incoming beetles that were in midair. However, more flying beetles forced Wei Xiaobei to retreat more than 10 meters. Bang bang. His great spear once again shot out and shook back and forth, sending most of the beetles to ground. Although the attacks were not enough to kill the beetles, cracks were slowly appearing on their shells, some seriously injured ones were even leaking out yellow fluid. However, this was still not enough to kill these beetles, at the very least it would take 10 more times to kill them. This time, Wei Xiaobei deliberately let a few of them charge over and attacked them with electricity when they came close. The same as before happened, and the sacred beetles only just fell on the ground. This time however, there were some things that were different, such as the few injuries that had appeared on Wei Xiaobei's body. The beetles that had been shot down by electricity could not escape Wei Xiaobei's foot and became corpses on the sand. With every attack, he killed 10 sacred beetle descendants. It was equivalent to killing a single giant black scorpion. From any angle, the efficiency of killing the beetles was lower than killing a giant black scorpion. However, the amount of sacred beetles was enormous. If Wei Xiaobei could kill all these beetles, then the amount of evolution points that he could obtain would be in the 10,000s. After this point, Wei Xiaobei thought about the bazooka that he obtained previously. If he used that and fired it here, hundreds of sacred beetles would be eliminated in an instant. Naturally, it would have been a lot better if he had a flamethrower. Although the beetles could endure the heat, he did not believe that they could endure the flames from a flamethrower. After all, the temperatures that a flamethrower could reach was at the point of being able to melt a tank. No matter what was said, this was only his imagination running wild. Eliminating this group of sacred beetles was surely not an easy task. After fighting with these beetles for more than 10 minutes, Wei Xiaobei had tried many ways to kill them, but he had not yet killed 100 of them. Most of the time was taken up by Wei Xiaobei escaping their encirclement. If the beetles were to surround him, it would not take 20 seconds before his body would be fully covered of them. Even if he could release electricity, there was no guarantee of safety. In the past 10 minutes, Wei Xiaobei's mind was in a high level of alertness and panic. As a result, most of his stamina had been drained. At this time, although he still had a bit more energy, he decided to escape. It was important to leave a bit of energy to do other things. If he staked everything and failed, then he would no longer have any chances. In truth, his decision was not wrong. When Wei Xiaobei had escaped for 100 meters, he suddenly noticed one thing. A sacred beetles were already in front of him. This meant that a small group might have taken a detour around him. If he still stayed and fought with the previous group, he would truly be surrounded. Since he discovered the beetles' plot, Wei Xiaobei did not have any more thoughts of fighting them and dodged the incoming beetles. Just from the beetles' plan, it was easy to tell that they had a certain level of intelligence. Following Wei Xiaobei's escape, the beetles did not follow him anymore and merged back with the main group. In this period of time, Wei Xiaobei still took the risk to follow behind them and killed them from time to time. However, this kind of provocation did not stop the beetles' movements at all. They noticed that they could not chase after Wei Xiaobei with their current speed. It seemed that they had given up on Wei Xiaobei, which was different from what an army ants would have done. If it was an army ants, in reality, as long as there was food in front of them, they would risk their lives to cross rivers and flames. Naturally, if the sacred beetles did not have their ability to judge, they would have probably disappeared from the desert already. Wei Xiaobei followed behind the beetles from afar. At the same time, he focused on his status panel to look at his evolution points. After paying the price of a few injuries, his evolution points had reached 565 points. This amount was not a lot, but was not small either. Facing an army like the sacred beetles, Wei Xiaobei did not have plans to save his evolution points. After thinking for a bit, he decided to put 100 points each into all agility sub-attributes, increasing everything by 1 point, which also increased agility by 1 point, making it a total of 16 points. In reality, 15 points was barely enough to respond to the sacred beetle's head-on attacks. For better or worse, Wei Xiaobei was able to dodge one or two beetles, so they were not that much of a threat. However, this did not mean that Wei Xiaobei could sleep peacefully with this. Even if he could escape while surrounded by them, he would at the very least, be heavily injured. On the other hand, the close relationship between all the agility sub-attributes was extremely important. Not one should be less. As a result, Wei Xiaobei would increase them all at the same time. As for the remaining 165 points, Wei Xiaobei placed them all into voltage. After allocating his points, only one evolution point remained. His release electricity was now able to release 378 volts of electricity. This was close to the 380 volts in industry-specific usages. This voltage was different from the 220 volts of electricity that was found in common households. Wei Xiaobei had previously seen a worker accidentally hitting a 380 voltage power switch barehanded. The person's head instantly shot up due to the electric current, and his brains were fried by the high voltage. The might of 380 volts was simply incomparable to 220 volts. Releasing electricity was very useful. Although it was difficult to break the air when the voltage was under 1000 volts, touching a beetle was enough to make them fall, ensuring Wei Xiaobei's safety. Wei Xiaobei had already tested this. He had lured out one of the beetles and allowed it to jump onto his body, and then shocked it with electricity. Although the beetle's carapace was hard, once it bit into Wei Xiaobei's skin and got drenched in his blood, its electrical resistance would decrease. In the end, the voltage was able to pass through. The 378 volts were able to instantly move through the beetle and kill it. Taking advantage of the fact that the beetle army was climbing up the mountain range, Wei Xiaobei tested every possible method to lure the sacred beetles and used the great spear or his electricity to kill them. As a result, his evolution points were slowly increasing. His actions were similar to walking on a tightrope, but because his agility had reached 16 points, it gave him enough confidence to deal with the beetle's counterattack. In other words, even if a beetle recklessly charged towards him, Wei Xiaobei would be able to rely on his agility to escape. It must be known that 16 points in any sub-attribute in agility was enough to make a normal person wide-eyed if it were shown to them. 16 points in hand-eye coordination would allow a person to see anything larger than 10 centimeters in a 500-meter radius. Moreover, it would allow a person to hit a fly with a single piece of stone. 16 points in flexibility and reflex combined together would allow a person to dodge attacks from being surrounded by more than 10 pikes. Moreover, it could increase a person's speed to be able to run 12 meters per second. This would have already surpassed the world record by a huge amount. If he went to the Olympic Games, earning the gold medal in a 100-meter would be too easy. Moreover, as long as he had enough patience, he could run a marathon. And as long as he maintained 60% of this speed, he could run 5 kilometers in just 11 minutes. Or even faster. 16 points in balance allowed him to walk a 1,000-meter tightrope without relying on anything else. With the combination of these sub-attributes, as long as he was not surrounded, Wei Xiaobei would be able to easily escape from the tide of beetles. Moreover, even if he was surrounded, Wei Xiaobei was still able to last for a longer amount of time compared to other people. No matter what was said, Wei Xiaobei was gaining a huge bargain from poking behind the tide of beetles. After a bit of hard work, Wei Xiaobei's evolution point was now at 211 points. As long as nothing unexpected happened, Wei Xiaobei would be able to increase his agility by another point. Against slow monsters like the sacred beetles, an increase in agility was not bad. However, after continuing this action for a while, something unexpected happened. When Wei Xiaobei had just killed another sacred beetle and retreated 10 meters to evade an incoming sacred beetle, he suddenly heard a high-pitched bird sound. What is that? Wei Xiaobei suddenly felt his skin slightly tingle, and this was especially stronger on the left side of his forehead. This was the effect of reaching the negative Jing level in Guoshu. His whole body was naturally giving him warnings of incoming danger. At this point in time, Wei Xiaobei did not even have the mind to chase after the sacred beetles anymore. He quickly turned around and moved more than 30 meters back. And then he dove into the sand in order to bury himself under it. He used his hands and feet to dig more and bury himself deeper. In half a breath's time, Wei Xiaobei had been completely hidden under the sand. At this time, the pain from his skin had decreased by a lot. Only then, did he carefully poke out his head from the sand to look toward the direction of the threat. It's the scarlet pheasant. It's that normal 3-star creature, scarlet pheasant. It had once again appeared, perhaps due to it being startled by the sacred beetles entering the crevice, or due to it feeling that the sacred beetles had entered its territory. Flames came out from the faraway crevice and the scarlet pheasant soared through the sky. The sacred beetles that were continuously climbing into the crevice were instantly ignited into flames when the scarlet pheasant came out. Crackling and rattling sounds as if fireworks were lit up could be heard. The sacred beetle descendants that had been ignited slightly swelled red and then quickly burst. The fluids inside splashed everywhere as if the body of the beetles were implanted with explosives. Ong! The scarlet pheasant let out another high-pitched shriek and dived down while becoming a ball of flames from above. Seeing the scarlet pheasant coming down, the sacred beetles did not just sit and wait for their deaths. All of them began to flap their wings and charged towards the flames. Let alone the scarlet pheasant, even Wei Xiaobei was able to dodge the speed of the sacred beetle descendants. Moreover, even if the beetles charged towards it, they might not even be able to touch it because of the flames that it was still releasing. In a flash, the flames hit the ground, creating a huge booming sound. The flames and the sand blasted everywhere. Every beetle had been licked by the flame and ignited. After a few breaths of time, their bodies swelled and exploded. Seeing the beetles exploding like popcorn, Wei Xiaobei felt a tinge of pain in his heart. How great would it be if I could release flames? In just one go, more than 70 beetles exploded. This was equivalent to around 2,000 evolution points. However, if Wei Xiaobei were to go over there, he might also be targeted by the scarlet pheasant and become a human torch. Although he was able to hide from the liveliness of the desert right now, he still felt hot under the sand, though it was a lot better than the sacred beetles that were the target of the scarlet pheasant's fury. Wei Xiaobei even sneakily used a straw and drank from the freshwater drinking bag left by the mercenaries. While there was chaos so close to him, he, himself, comfortably enjoyed the pleasure of drinking water. After all, Wei Xiaobei's dryness endurance was not that high. It had not yet leveled up, and adding the fact that there was almost no moisture in the air, Wei Xiaobei had to replenish the water that he had lost after fighting with the beetles. This was also the best time for him to do so. Life was hard and extreme joy could easily turn to sadness. What he never imagined was that after he drank the water, he could see the remaining beetles moving towards his direction. Fuck. Wei Xiaobei's pores had opened. These sacred beetles were simply harassing him. When the scarlet pheasant had not yet appeared, they were ignoring him, and now they wanted to fight him. Did the sacred beetles go mad? Could it be that they believe I am easier to bully? No matter what was said, Wei Xiaobei had confirmed one thing. He could move in the sand, but he could not make big movements, or else, the scarlet pheasant would notice him too. It must be known that a bird monster like the scarlet pheasant had such good eyesight it made his hair stand in anger. Let alone 1,000 meters, it could even see twice that distance and would easily notice anything that made big movements. After pondering for a while, he did not wait for the beetles to reach him. He firmly decided to increase the voltage of his special skill. After using his evolution points until there was 1 point left, his voltage had increased to 483 volts. The conversion rate was still 2 evolution point to 1 volt. Wei Xiaobei thought that maybe it would only change once it reached 1000 volts. While Wei Xiaobei was still thinking about this, he stretched out his right hand. When the right hand appeared within 1 meter of the beetles, their antennas immediately straightened. Their speed increased like a mother lion that had found a gazelle. Crackle. The first beetles that pounced on Wei Xiaobei's arm were shocked back. Their entire body fumed with smoke as they dropped flat on the ground. Wei Xiaobei quickly caught one of them and lightly pinched it. In an instant, the sacred beetle stopped moving. The water content in its body had been broken down by the electric current and died. At this point, Wei Xiaobei was immediately relieved. With his release electricity, he could at the very least stop them from moving for more than an hour. Hiss. Just as he relaxed a bit, he was immediately bitten by a sacred beetle. He could not help let out a light hiss at the pain. Most of the sacred beetles had been shocked by Wei Xiaobei, but they were not moving in a single flow and had their differences. Some of the more sturdier ones were able to bite Wei Xiaobei's arm before they fell. Just like that, Wei Xiaobei's arm was filled with cut-like injuries. As his arm continuously leaked out blood, the sacred beetles became even more crazed. Wei Xiaobei had doubts. If the amount of sacred beetles doubled, then his arm would only be left with bones in just 3 minutes. Crackle. Crackle. Sparks continued to flash between Wei Xiaobei's skin and the sacred beetles. One by one, the sacred beetles who were greedy for meat were shocked to the ground. However, Wei Xiaobei did not stay idle. His left hand would stretch out from time to time and catch those tougher ones. With a shock of electricity, they died in his hands. The amount of beetles that chased after Wei Xiaobei did not amount to much, they were about 300 of them. However, 300 sacred beetle descendants was enough to slowly bite away at Wei Xiaobei's flesh. Luckily, a new monster appeared from the fiery Red Mountain range. From Wei Xiaobei's vision, the beetles had already covered half the mountain, and some had even reached the peak. Perhaps because the sacred beetles had once again entered somewhere they should not have went, continuous bird's cry had echoed. Blazing red shadows suddenly rose up from the top of the mountain. Wei Xiaobei was originally enduring the pain from having his meat bitten, when at that moment, his attention had been fully taken away. What is that? Is that a blaze that soared to the skies? It was indeed a blaze, but inside it were black birds, each of them not bigger than the size of his palm. What? Wei Xiaobei's position was quite far away from the black birds, so there was no explanation in his battle log. The only thing that was there, was records of the sacred beetles biting him. The black birds looked familiar. Wei Xiaobei quickly racked his brain and quickly reached an answer. The black birds looked like crows. However, they appeared to be a lot smaller than crows. Crows that could let out flames. Could it be the golden crows? Wei Xiaobei unconsciously shook his head. The description of golden crows in the legends were suns that moved in the sky. There was one common legend recorded among the ancient works. Ho-Yi shoot down 9 suns. According to ancient legends, the celestial emperor and Shiha gave life to 10 suns. These 10 suns were perched on a red mulberry tree called the Fusang tree in the Valley of the Sun. They would take turns and be on duty to shine light on earth. However, because they were mischievous creatures, all 10 of them came out on a certain day. This created a drought on the lands and dried up the rivers. In the end, a distracted-looking youth came out and shot down 9 of them, saving the common people. After 9 of the 10 suns disappeared, Ho-Yi's achievements were sung throughout the land. However, the treatment he had was not that good. The sun there, was the golden crow, which was also known as the 3-legged crow. In summary, it was a crow that was wreathed in flames and had 3 legs. In ancient legends, the golden crow was one of the famous supernatural birds. Its position was no less than the phoenix or the vermilion bird. As for the crows that appeared in front of him, they were shrouded in flames, but they had 2 legs. The distance was also quite far, so Wei Xiaobei could not see them clearly. However, they appeared to be supernatural birds similar to the golden crow. From his eyes, he could count that there were more than 30 of them. 30 golden crows. That's a joke. If they were truly golden crows, then their appearance would have already turned the place into a sea of flames. Wei Xiaobei simply did not doubt that the real golden crow would be this fierce. Tens of crows that were lit in flames dived down from the sky. Wherever they passed, the scarlet beetles, no matter how strong, were turned into small balls of flame in an instant. If the scarlet pheasant was a supersonic fighter plane, then the burning crows were bomber planes. They were slower than the scarlet pheasant, but by working in a group and sweeping down the mountain, their power was clear to anyone that could see. They were not inferior to the scarlet pheasant at all. After their appearance, the scarlet beetle army collapsed. The scarlet beetles that were still stuck on the wall, purposely fell down to escape. As for those that had not yet climbed up, they also quickly retreated. Even the scarlet beetles that moved towards Wei Xiaobei turned around and ran away without the slightest reluctance after the blazing crows appeared. When the scarlet beetles withdrew, Wei Xiaobei immediately sighed. He lightly swung his arms that were badly mutilated. The muddy sand on them had to also be cleaned by drinking water, otherwise, it would be bad if even a single grain was left inside. Luckily, this kind of injury was quickly healed by his high vitality. In just 10 seconds, the bleeding had already stopped. As long as he carefully washed it, there should not be any problems. While Wei Xiaobei was cleaning his injuries, the blazing crows had already reached the ground. Afterwards, they spread out, sweeping in every direction. The temperature of the blazing crows appeared to be lower than the scarlet pheasant, but with their slow speed, they were able to easily burn the beetles to ashes. As the blazing crows swept the ground, the sacred beetles became even more chaotic. They had already lost their army-like discipline, making it seem like they had lost their intelligence. Seeing the flames come down, most of them charged toward the blazing crows, trying to kill them and eliminate the threat. The sacred beetle army was roughly around 1 million bugs strong, but just tens of blazing crows passing by was enough to leave rows of sacred beetle ashes, leaving the sacred beetles with no chance of a counterattack. It could be said like this: the blazing crows were in complete control over the sacred beetles, and the sacred beetle army would only last an hour if they were not able to escape. After Wei Xiaobei's arms recovered a bit more, he tore his clothes into strips and raped them on his arms. This was not done in order to quicken the healing, but to prevent the injury on his arms to become even more severe. After finishing his preparations, Wei Xiaobei carefully crawled forward. He used his hands to continuously dig through the sand, moving closer to the fiery red mountain range. As for the great spear, he had temporarily left it behind. If Wei Xiaobei had brought it, he would have a hard time covering his tracks. In any case, no monster would randomly pick it up, and even if he left it there. Wei Xiaobei, meanwhile, was not a giant black scorpion, so his speed under the sand was much slower. He was only able to move at 2 meters per second thanks to his 16-point agility. It was easy to imagine how difficult it was to advance while hiding under the sand. Luckily, when the beetles were defeated, the tide retreated towards the way they came. Moreover, the density of the tide had largely decreased, making those blazing crows have a hard time eliminating them in one go. A portion of the blazing crows were so gluttonous that they would pick up a sacred beetle from time to time and just eat them. Just like this, the speed of killing the sacred beetles had slowed down. Who knew how the blazing crows were eating the sacred beetles, who had a bigger-sized body than them? After using up a lot of time, Wei Xiaobei had advanced 200 meters and suddenly stopped. A small amount of the beetles were so scared that they even moved towards his direction. Wei Xiaobei was surprised. If he were to be bit by these beetles, it would later be impossible for him to lure them using his arms anymore. Should I initiate an attack, or should I endure their biting? This was a problem related to his survival. However, before Wei Xiaobei made a decision, a wave of heat surged towards his direction. One of the blazing crows had flew over and was holding on to one sacred beetle in its beak. The flame from its body had also spread out, killing more than 10 beetles. The remaining several hundred ran away in 2 different directions. Wei Xiaobei relaxed a bit after seeing the blazing crow chasing after the sacred beetles and getting further away from him. This whole situation that had happened was truly exhilarating. Luckily, the blazing crows had helped him disperse the beetles. Thinking up to here, Wei Xiaobei noticed that the sand covering his body had become burning hot. The burning heat passed through, making Wei Xiaobei's back slightly ache in pain. However, compared to being exposed to the escaping beetles, this was a small matter. In the next moment, Wei Xiaobei focused on his status panel. The blazing crow had passed quite close to him, so Wei Xiaobei did not believe that the blazing crow would not appear in the battle log. Battle log. You witnessed the battle between the fire crows and the sacred beetle descendants. Sacred beetle descendant formation collapsed and scattered. Fire crow. Wei Xiaobei concentrated on the name of the fire crow. Simple information on the fire crow appeared. Fire crows, 2-star elite creature. These are creatures born from the blood of fallen golden crows. They live in groups and are adept at using flames. 2-star elite creatures. So that's why they looked like golden crows with 2 legs. Wei Xiaobei recalled the burning feeling while the fire crows had passed by. He felt a slight threat from them, but it was not that clear. Looking at it from this angle, this meant that he had a chance of victory if he fought one-on-one. After all, the fire crows were a lot slower than the scarlet pheasant. Although their bodies were covered in flames, everything would be fine as long as the temperature of the flames did not exceed what the leg-hair great spear could handle. This, in itself, would increase his probability of winning. As for the group of sacred beetle descendants, they would probably at most be labeled as a small detachment, so they did not matter much to the main group. Wei Xiaobei had already understood this point from the previous battle. Bang! 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 Should I withdraw here, or should I force myself into their fight? When Wei Xiaobei began to explore his options, he sensed the ground shake. The sand on his body were shaken to piling at his sides. Could it be an earthquake? Wei Xiaobei did not know if earthquakes occurred in the desert, but anything could happen inside the dust world. As a result, even if earthquakes did not happen in real deserts, having an earthquake in the deserts of the dust world would not be strange. However, following the spread of the earthquake, the sacred beetle descendants that had been scattered by the fire crow began to assemble. Even if the fire crows continuously passed by and burned them to ashes, the beetles did not retreat at all. On the contrary, they sped up. Hum! An oppressive sound came from the desert. In an instant, Wei Xiaobei's entire body was filled with goosebumps. Extreme danger. This feeling had only happened once before, and that was when the citizen of Longbow appeared. At this time, Wei Xiaobei did not hesitate and jump out from the sand. However, he did not dare be arrogant and stand up. He still stuck himself to the sand and crawled back the way he came from. On his way back, nothing unexpected happened. The reason nothing happened was that the sacred beetles were beginning to come together. Even if Wei Xiaobei walked beside them, they would not even pay any attention to him. The fire crows had already returned to the skies and circled above while letting out cries, as if to strengthen themselves. As for the scarlet pheasant, it did not chase the sacred beetles anymore and returned back inside the crevice. Wei Xiaobei returned to his previous spot and picked up the great spear. He did not stop and continued to move forward. He only stopped moving after a sharp pain came from behind him. He jumped into the sand to hide himself while observing the situation. At this time, the shaking became more violent. From Wei Xiaobei's estimate, it seemed to be around a magnitude of 5. The gathering beetles had already decreased to only a third. The sacred beetles would be buried by the sand from time to time by the earthquake and then climb out again. As time passed, the shaking had already reached magnitude 6. Even Wei Xiaobei, who was 1,000 meters away, could feel the shaking as if he was lying down on a spring bed, being bounced up and down every 3 seconds. As for the sand covering his body, they had already been shaken off a long time ago and was exposing his body. Naturally, Wei Xiaobei was already in a safe spot. Neither the attention of the sacred beetles nor the fire crows were on him. Finally, a protrusion suddenly appeared on top of the sacred beetle gathering. They appeared as if mites surrounding an egg, and in an instant, they were all sent flying away. The protruding sand dune kept growing as countless grains of sand piled on the sides. Hum! An ear-shattering sound echoed. After the loud sound, the remaining sand on top of the sand dune flowed down. A giant golden monster surpassing 100 meters suddenly appeared on the sand. This is... Seeing that it looked familiar, Wei Xiaobei shook his head to shake away the dizziness caused from the sound, and then carefully sifted through his mind. Sacred beetle descendant. It has the same carapace, the same 6 legs, and the same antenna. Other than the outer color being different, and its body being bigger by a few times, the giant monster was a perfect copy of the small sacred beetles. Luckily, even though Wei Xiaobei was a bit dizzy, he did not forget to check his battle log. Since he was affected by the sound, there would definitely be something in the battle log. Battle log. You have received soundwave attack from 4-star elite creature Radiant Sacred Beetle. You have been afflicted by dizziness. Dizziness has decreased. 4-star elite creature Radiant Sacred Beetle. Wei Xiaobei was speechless. He felt as if his luck went bad too quickly. A 4-star elite creature was only 1 rank below the strong and powerful citizen of Longbow, and it had actually appeared in front of him. It must be known that the big tree spirit was only a 3-star terror creature. Radiant Sacred Beetle. Wei Xiaobei thought for a moment. The closest creature to this should be the Christian holy animal. The problem here was that the sacred beetle drenched in holy blood and the Christian holy animal was only the size of his finger. It was too small compared to the radiant sacred beetle. Could it be a monster from some game? When Wei Xiaobei thought to this point, he immediately froze. However, in the next instant, he shook his head. If the dust world was a game, then the one who created it would be too terrifying. Moreover, there needs to be players in a game. The people that I had met in the dust world had mostly died. Wei Xiaobei felt dizzy just exploring this train of thought, and temporarily placed it in the back of his mind. It is impossible for the dust world to be that simple. In reality, the cry of the radiant sacred beetle only gave Wei Xiaobei a headache. The fire crows that were circling in the sky, on the other hand, had started to fall down from the sky. When the radiant sacred beetle cried out, they appeared to have received a heavy attack to the point that the flames on their bodies had been extinguished. Luckily, the peak of the fiery red mountain range was 30 meters below them. Even if they fell down, they would not die from the fall. At most, they would be covered in dirt. After all, for the fire crows, even if their bodies lost control and fall down, they could still avoid death from a heavy injury. Moreover, with their vitality, this kind of hit would not injure them at all. Hum. The radiant sacred beetle let out another cry. This time, Wei Xiaobei was prepared as he had already experienced it. Seeing the radiant sacred beetle raising its body with its forelegs, he immediately covered his ears and stuck close to the ground. The high-pitched sound passed through the sand like a storm. Even though Wei Xiaobei had covered his ears, he had only been able to dampen it a bit, and still became slightly dizzy. From this, it could be seen how much pain the fire crows were suffering. However, the cry was not the radiant sacred beetle's only means of attack. After it cried out, the radiant sacred beetle's carapace shone a gold light and spread everywhere like a growing sun. It only stopped and it reached 200 meters in diameter. Inside the radius, the sacred beetle descendants quickly recovered from any injuries. After they recovered, these sacred beetle descendants trembled with excitement as they quietly hummed. They stood close to the radiant sacred beetles like guards protecting a VIP. On the other hand, the radiant sacred beetle raised its large back part. After it shrunk a little, it suddenly sprayed out white-colored specks.